Have you ever noticed how the best things in your life happened exactly when you stopped expecting them? You spent years planning every detail, creating huge expectations about how things should be, and when they did not happen the way you imagined, you felt broken inside. But there is an ancient Buddhist teaching that reveals something that will completely change the way you live. The more you release these rigid expectations about how your life should be, the more space you create for incredible things to happen in ways you never imagined. It is not about giving up on your dreams. It is about stopping suffocating life with your expectations. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, let this video guide you to a new way of relating to life. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your like and comment from which part of the world you are watching. Get comfortable and relax. Let us begin. Have you ever noticed how disappointed you feel when things don't go according to plan? That's exactly what Buddhist philosophy addresses through one of its most fundamental principles. In Buddhism, non-attachment represents a transformative approach to life that can significantly alter how we experience everyday reality. This concept isn't about not caring or becoming emotionally detached from the world around us. Rather, it offers a more nuanced understanding of how our expectations shape our happiness. Buddhist teachings suggest that much of our suffering stems from our tendency to cling tightly to specific outcomes. When we become fixated on how things should unfold, we create a mental framework that often conflicts with reality. Imagine planning an outdoor event and becoming completely invested in perfect weather. You check forecasts repeatedly, worry constantly, and when rain clouds appear, you experience genuine distress. According to Buddhist wisdom, this suffering doesn't come from the rain itself, but from your attachment to the expectation of sunshine. Non-attachment involves holding our expectations lightly, maintaining openness to whatever actually unfolds. This doesn't mean abandoning plans or goals altogether. You can still organize your outdoor event while simultaneously accepting that weather remains beyond your control. This mental flexibility allows you to adapt more easily to changing circumstances rather than resisting reality. The practice of non-attachment extends far beyond simple scenarios like weather. It applies to career trajectories, relationships, personal achievements, and virtually every aspect of human experience. Many people spend years chasing specific visions of success, only to discover emptiness upon achieving them. Others experience profound disappointment when relationships don't match their idealized expectations. Buddhist wisdom suggests these experiences of dissatisfaction arise from rigid attachment to mental constructs about how life should be. This principle becomes particularly relevant when examining how we form expectations about other people. We often create elaborate mental images of how friends, family members, or romantic partners should behave. When they inevitably act according to their own nature rather than our expectations, we experience frustration. Non-attachment encourages us to appreciate people as they actually are, not as we wish them to be. This shift in perspective can transform relationships, replacing disappointment with genuine appreciation for others' authentic qualities. The Buddhist approach to expectations doesn't advocate for pessimism or lowering standards. Instead, it encourages a balanced perspective that distinguishes between setting intentions and becoming attached to specific outcomes. You can work diligently toward meaningful goals while maintaining psychological flexibility about exactly how those goals manifest. This mindset creates space for unexpected opportunities and experiences that might actually exceed your original expectations. In practical terms, cultivating non-attachment requires developing awareness of when we're forming rigid expectations. Meditation practices help us observe our thoughts without immediately identifying with them. Through regular practice, we can notice when we're creating mental narratives about how things should be, allowing us to hold these thoughts more lightly. This awareness creates freedom to respond to life as it actually unfolds rather than constantly comparing reality against mental projections. The process of letting go of expectations often feels counterintuitive in achievement-oriented cultures. Many worry that abandoning firm expectations might lead to complacency or lack of motivation. Buddhist practitioners report the opposite effect. Freedom from rigid expectations often releases energy previously consumed by anxiety and disappointment. This liberated energy can be channeled into present-moment awareness and skillful action based on current circumstances rather than preconceived notions. Non-attachment also creates space for genuine surprise and spontaneous joy. When we release our grip on how things should be, we become more receptive to appreciating things as they actually are. Simple experiences, a conversation with a stranger, an unexpected detour, even a challenge that disrupts our plans, can become sources of discovery and delight when encountered with an open mind. This receptivity to life's natural unfolding represents a profound shift from controlling to participating in our experiences. The Buddhist practice of non-attachment remains deeply relevant in our modern world, characterized by constant planning, goal setting, and achievement orientation. Many people report feeling perpetually disappointed despite unprecedented material comfort, a phenomenon Buddhist wisdom would attribute to the proliferation of expectations facilitated by media, advertising, and social comparison. By practicing non-attachment, we can engage fully with life's ambitions and relationships while avoiding the suffering that comes from rigid expectations. Learning non-attachment doesn't happen overnight. It requires patient practice and gentle self-awareness. Many find that starting with small, everyday expectations provides manageable opportunities to practice before addressing deeper attachments. Notice your expectations about traffic, weather, or how others should respond to you. When reality differs from expectations, observe your reaction without judgment. This simple practice gradually develops the mental flexibility that characterizes non-attachment. The wisdom of non-attachment reminds us that life itself remains fundamentally unpredictable and filled with countless variables beyond our control. Rather than struggling against this basic reality, we can learn to work with it skillfully. This approach doesn't diminish our engagement with life, but enhances it by removing the filters of expectation that often separate us from direct experience. Through non-attachment, we develop the capacity to meet life directly, appreciating both its challenges and joys with equal presence. The relationship between expectations and suffering in Buddhist philosophy. Imagine waiting excitedly for a package that never arrives, or planning the perfect vacation only to encounter one problem after another. That feeling of disappointment you experience illustrates one of Buddhism's most profound insights about human suffering. For thousands of years, Buddhist philosophy has explored the connection between our expectations and our experience of suffering in remarkably sophisticated ways that remain relevant in our contemporary lives. At the heart of Buddhist understanding lies the concept of dukkha, often translated as suffering or unsatisfactoriness. While many associate Buddhism primarily with meditation techniques or ethical guidelines, its foundational purpose addresses this universal human experience of suffering. The Buddha's teachings, particularly the Four Noble Truths, provide a comprehensive analysis of suffering's causes and potential remedies. Within this framework, expectations play a crucial role in creating and perpetuating our discontent. According to Buddhist philosophy, suffering emerges from the gap between what we want reality to be and what reality actually is. Our minds constantly generate expectations about nearly everything: how our day should unfold, how others should treat us, how our lives should progress, how our bodies should look and feel. When reality inevitably diverges from these mental projections, we experience emotions ranging from mild disappointment to profound despair. This pattern repeats throughout our lives in endless variations, from minor annoyances to major life crises. The Buddha identified craving and attachment as the primary sources of suffering in his second noble truth. When we examine our expectations closely, we find they typically contain embedded desires for comfort, success, recognition, pleasure, security, or countless other outcomes. We become attached to these desired states and resist anything that threatens them. This attachment creates a conditional happiness that remains vulnerable to circumstances beyond our control. Buddhism suggests that this fundamental insecurity characterizes much of ordinary human experience. Our expectations often operate below the level of conscious awareness, making them particularly powerful and difficult to address. Many people move through life with unexamined assumptions about how things should be, only noticing these expectations when reality contradicts them. Buddhist practice encourages bringing these subconscious expectations into awareness through mindfulness and contemplation. This awareness represents the first step toward freedom from suffering created by rigid expectations. The problem intensifies because our minds tend to treat expectations as reality rather than as mental projections. We become so convinced of how things should unfold that we experience genuine shock and disorientation when faced with different outcomes. This cognitive confusion between our mental maps and actual territory creates unnecessary suffering beyond whatever challenges the situation itself presents. Buddhist psychology recognizes this confusion as a fundamental misunderstanding of how reality operates. Our relationship with expectations becomes particularly complex regarding other people. We develop elaborate expectations about how friends, family members, romantic partners, colleagues, and even strangers should behave, when they inevitably act according to their own nature, conditioning, and choices rather than conforming to our mental scripts. We experience frustration, anger, or hurt. Buddhist wisdom suggests that much interpersonal suffering stems from these unmet expectations rather than from others' actions themselves. The connection between expectations and suffering extends to our relationship with ourselves. Many people maintain punishing expectations about their own achievements, appearance, emotions, or spiritual progress. When they inevitably fall short of these idealized self-images, they experience shame, disappointment, and self-judgment. Buddhist teachings on compassion emphasize the importance of releasing these rigid self-expectations and developing kinder relationships with ourselves and our limitations. Buddhist philosophy doesn't suggest eliminating all expectations, which would be practically impossible given how our minds function. Instead, it offers several approaches for working skillfully with expectations to reduce unnecessary suffering. One approach involves holding expectations lightly, recognizing them as mental projections rather than reality. Another involves examining expectations for reasonableness and adjusting them when they conflict with reality's natural limitations. Yet another focuses on developing equanimity that remains stable regardless of whether expectations are met. Modern psychology has increasingly validated Buddhist insights about expectations and suffering. Research in cognitive psychology demonstrates how our expectations function as perceptual filters, influencing how we interpret and remember experiences. Studies in happiness research consistently show that adjusting expectations often proves more effective for increasing life satisfaction than changing external circumstances. These scientific findings echo Buddhist wisdom that has recognized for centuries how our relationship with expectations shapes our subjective experience. The Buddhist approach to expectations doesn't advocate for pessimism or abandoning aspirations. Rather, it suggests distinguishing between setting meaningful intentions and becoming attached to specific outcomes. We can work diligently toward important goals while maintaining psychological flexibility about exactly how they manifest. This balanced approach allows for purposeful action without the suffering created by rigid expectations. Some of the most powerful Buddhist practices directly address our relationship with expectations. Meditation helps us observe the arising of expectations without immediately identifying with them. Contemplation of impermanence reminds us that everything constantly changes, challenging our expectation of stability. Loving kindness practices develop compassion for ourselves and others when expectations inevitably go unmet. These practices gradually transform our relationship with expectations at a deep level. The Buddha often emphasized that his teachings should be tested through personal experience rather than accepted on authority. This experiential approach applies particularly well to understanding the relationship between expectations and suffering. We can observe in our daily lives how expectations create mental narratives, how we react when reality contradicts these narratives, and how this process generates suffering. This first-hand investigation often proves more convincing than philosophical explanations alone. By developing awareness of how expectations shape our experience and practicing more skillful relationships with them, we can significantly reduce unnecessary suffering in our lives. This doesn't mean abandoning hopes or goals, but rather engaging with life as it actually unfolds rather than constantly measuring it against mental projections. Through this approach, Buddhism offers practical wisdom for finding greater peace and satisfaction amid life's inevitable ups and downs. The personal investigation of expectations and suffering that Buddhism encourages leads us naturally to practical methods for addressing this challenge. Understanding the connection between our expectations and suffering is valuable, but even more important is developing concrete practices that help us work with expectations more skillfully in everyday life. This is where mindfulness practices become particularly relevant tools for transformation. Mindfulness practices offer practical techniques for observing and gradually reducing our habit of forming rigid expectations about our experiences. At its core, mindfulness involves paying attention to the present moment with an attitude of openness and non-judgment. When applied specifically to expectations, these practices help us notice when our minds are creating elaborate stories about how things should be rather than accepting what is actually happening. This awareness creates space between the formation of an expectation and our identification with it. One of the most fundamental mindfulness practices for working with expectations begins with simple breath meditation. By sitting quietly and focusing attention on the natural rhythm of breathing, we train our minds to stay present rather than constantly projecting into an imagined future. This practice might seem unrelated to expectations at first, but it establishes the basic attentional stability needed to notice when expectations arise. Many practitioners report that after several weeks of regular breath meditation, they spontaneously begin noticing expectations forming in real time rather than only recognizing them after disappointment has already occurred. The technique of mental noting or labeling proves particularly helpful for working with expectations during meditation. When you notice your mind creating an expectation about anything, from how long you should be able to sit comfortably to what benefits meditation should provide, you simply note expecting or expectation in your mind. This simple act of labeling creates a crucial moment of awareness that interrupts the usual automatic process of believing and attaching to the expectation. Over time, this practice develops the habit of recognizing expectations as mental constructions rather than reality. Mindfulness practices also directly address the emotional reactions that accompany unmet expectations. When reality doesn't match our expectations, we typically experience emotions like disappointment, frustration, or even anger. Mindfulness teaches us to observe these emotional reactions with curiosity rather than being completely identified with them. You might notice, for example, the physical sensations of disappointment in your body, perhaps a heaviness in your chest or a tightening in your throat. This embodied awareness helps prevent emotional reactions from escalating and allows them to pass more quickly. The Buddhist principle of impermanence, anicca, forms the foundation for another powerful mindfulness practice related to expectations. By deliberately contemplating how everything constantly changes, our bodies, relationships, jobs, possessions, and even our thoughts and feelings, we gradually loosen our expectation of stability. Practitioners often focus on observing subtle changes in their experience during meditation, noting how sensations, thoughts, and emotions continuously arise and pass away. This direct perception of impermanence naturally reduces rigid expectations by aligning our understanding with reality's fluid nature. daily life offers countless opportunities to practice mindfulness of expectations outside formal meditation. Traffic jams, long lines at stores, unexpected work demands, or changes in plans all trigger expectations and potential disappointment. By bringing mindful awareness to these situations as they occur, we can catch expectations in the act of forming. Many practitioners find it helpful to pause briefly when feeling frustrated and ask themselves, what expectation am I holding right now that's creating this suffering? This simple question often reveals unconscious expectations we didn't even realize were operating. Body-based mindfulness practices help ground awareness in physical sensations rather than mental projections. Walking meditation, mindful movement, or simply pausing to feel your feet on the ground can interrupt the mind's tendency to race ahead with expectations. These practices are particularly valuable during times of stress or when facing situations that typically trigger strong expectations. The direct experience of bodily sensations anchors attention in present reality rather than imagined futures. Mindfulness of thoughts provides another essential practice for working with expectations. By observing the thinking process itself rather than getting caught in thought content, we develop the ability to recognize expectation-generating thoughts as they arise. Some practitioners imagine sitting on a riverbank watching thoughts float by like leaves on the water, neither pushing them away nor getting swept up in their stories. This detached observation helps us recognize expectations as mental events rather than accurate representations of reality. Integrating mindfulness into relationships offers powerful opportunities to work with expectations. Before important conversations or meetings, taking a few moments to check in with your expectations about how others should behave can prevent unnecessary disappointment. Mindful listening, giving full attention to another person without mentally preparing your response or judging their words against your expectations, creates space for genuine connection beyond preconceived notions. Many practitioners report that relationship conflicts diminish significantly when they become more aware of their expectations of others. Consistent mindfulness practice gradually develops what Buddhists call beginner's mind, the ability to approach each moment freshly without the filter of past experiences or future expectations. This quality of mind remains open to whatever arises rather than constantly comparing reality against mental templates. Cultivating beginner's mind doesn't mean forgetting practical knowledge or abandoning reasonable planning. Rather, it brings freshness and curiosity to each experience instead of assuming we already know exactly how things will or should unfold. The beauty of mindfulness practices lies in their practical, experiential nature. Rather than just intellectually understanding how expectations create suffering, these techniques help us transform our relationship with expectations from the inside out. Even 5 to 10 minutes of daily meditation can begin developing the awareness needed to work more skillfully with expectations. Many people find that starting with guided mindfulness meditations specifically focused on expectations provides helpful structure before moving to independent practice. The freedom that comes from reducing rigid expectations through mindfulness creates space for a different way of experiencing life, one characterized by greater spontaneity and presence. When we're not constantly measuring reality against our expectations, we can engage more directly and freshly with whatever is actually happening. This shift from expectation-driven living to present moment awareness opens the door to discovering joy and meaning in unexpected places. Living with spontaneity and presence represents one of the most rewarding aspects of Buddhist practice, yet it's often misunderstood in Western contexts. Many people mistakenly equate spontaneity with impulsiveness or lack of responsibility. However, Buddhist spontaneity emerges from deep presence rather than thoughtless reaction. When we're fully present and not bound by rigid expectations, we can respond to life with a quality of freshness and authenticity that feels both liberating and natural. The joy of spontaneity becomes apparent in simple, everyday moments when we're fully engaged rather than mentally elsewhere. Consider the difference between eating a meal while planning tomorrow's activities versus eating with full attention to tastes, textures, and sensations. The same food eaten with presence often provides significantly more satisfaction than when consumed on autopilot. This quality of engaged presence transforms ordinary experiences into sources of genuine enjoyment without requiring special circumstances. Spontaneity in the Buddhist sense doesn't mean abandoning all planning or structure. Rather, it involves holding plans lightly and remaining responsive to what each moment actually calls for. You might have a detailed itinerary for a trip, but remain open to unexpected discoveries or changes in circumstances. This balanced approach allows for necessary organization while maintaining the flexibility to adapt when reality unfolds differently than anticipated. Many people report that their most meaningful travel experiences came from unplanned detours or chance encounters that wouldn't have happened if they had rigidly adhered to expectations. Present moment awareness creates space for creativity that often gets blocked by expectations about how things should be done. Artists, musicians, writers, and innovators frequently describe how their best work emerges when they temporarily set aside expectations and conventional thinking. This creative flow state represents spontaneity at its most productive, fully engaged action that emerges naturally from deep presence rather than being forced or contrived. Even in non-artistic domains, this quality of spontaneous response often leads to more effective solutions than rigid adherence to predetermined approaches. Relationships particularly benefit from greater spontaneity and presence. When we interact with others through the filter of expectations about what they should say, how they should behave, or what we want from them, we miss experiencing them as they truly are. Conversely, when we bring full attention to interactions without predetermined scripts, we often discover surprising qualities and connections. Many people report that their most meaningful conversations happen spontaneously, arising from genuine presence rather than planned agendas or expected outcomes. Buddhist teachers often embody this quality of spontaneity in their interactions with students. Zen masters in particular are known for unconventional, unexpected responses that cut through conceptual thinking and expectations. These aren't random or meaningless behaviors, but arise from deep presence that responds directly to what each situation actually calls for rather than following prescribed formulas. While such dramatic expressions of spontaneity might not be appropriate in ordinary contexts, they illustrate the freshness that becomes possible when we move beyond rigid expectations. Living in the present moment doesn't mean ignoring the past or future. Rather, it involves relating to memories and plans from a centered present awareness rather than being mentally absent from current experience. We can learn from past experiences without being trapped in regret or nostalgia. Similarly, we can make reasonable plans for the future without constantly projecting ourselves out of the present. This balanced relationship with time allows for practical functioning while maintaining the aliveness that comes from present engagement. The practice of bringing attention fully to everyday activities, often called informal mindfulness practice, develops our capacity for spontaneity and presence in daily life. Simple activities like washing dishes, walking to the mailbox, or waiting in line become opportunities to practice full engagement rather than mental distraction. By deliberately bringing attention to physical sensations, sounds, and visual details during routine activities, we strengthen our ability to remain present rather than constantly pulled into expectations about the future or rumination about the past. Many people notice that as they develop greater presence, time seems to expand and ordinary experiences become richer. Activities done with full attention often feel more satisfying than supposedly special experiences consumed through the filter of expectations. A simple meal shared with friends and enjoyed with full presence might provide more genuine happiness than an expensive restaurant experience approached with high expectations and mental distraction. This shift in quality of experience doesn't require changing external circumstances, but comes from transforming our relationship with the present moment. The joy of spontaneity and present moment living represents liberation from what Buddhists call the suffering of comparison, the constant measuring of reality against our expectations, memories, or fantasies. When we can appreciate what's actually happening without immediately judging it against how we think things should be, we discover contentment that doesn't depend on perfect circumstances, small pleasures, chance encounters, and even challenges become part of life's rich texture rather than obstacles to happiness. This direct engagement with reality as it unfolds moment by moment constitutes the heart of Buddhist practice beyond all techniques and concepts. This direct engagement with reality reveals yet another beautiful dimension of Buddhist wisdom, the capacity to find surprise and enchantment in everyday life. While many people associate wonder and amazement with extraordinary experiences like viewing natural wonders or traveling to exotic locations, Buddhist perspectives suggest that extraordinary wonder is available within our ordinary lives if we approach them with the right mindset. This insight doesn't require special circumstances or unusual experiences, but rather a shift in how we perceive the familiar world around us. The Buddhist approach to finding enchantment in daily life centers on developing what Zen teachers call beginner's mind, the ability to see familiar experiences as if encountering them for the first time. Consider how a young child approaches everyday objects and situations with curiosity and wonder, the fascination with watching a spider build its web, the joy in splashing water, or the close examination of a leaf's intricate patterns. Adults typically lose this natural sense of wonder as familiarity and habitual perception create the illusion that we already know everything about our daily experiences. Buddhist practices deliberately cultivate the return to this fresh perception. One of the most accessible ways to rediscover enchantment involves paying closer attention to sensory experiences we normally take for granted. The simple act of eating provides a perfect example. Most people eat meals on autopilot, barely noticing flavors and textures as they think about other things. By contrast, eating mindfully, noticing the colors, smells, textures, and flavors with full attention can transform an ordinary meal into a rich sensory experience. People who practice this approach often report tasting their food more vividly and finding unexpected complexity in familiar dishes. Natural settings offer particularly rich opportunities for discovering everyday wonder, even in places we see regularly. A neighborhood park or garden visited with full attention reveals details and changes that easily escape notice during habitual visits. The shifting patterns of light through leaves, the varied songs of birds, the intricate structures of plants, all these become sources of fascination when approached with present moment awareness. Many Buddhist practitioners incorporate regular awareness walks into their routines, deliberately slowing down to notice the sensory richness of familiar environments. Buddhist perspectives on enchantment emphasize the profound wonder available in observing impermanence itself. While we typically think of constant change as ordinary or even problematic, Buddhist practitioners train themselves to perceive the miraculous quality of ongoing transformation, watching clouds form and dissolve, observing seasonal changes in plants, or noticing the shifting states of mind throughout a day. These ordinary processes reveal the dynamic, ever-changing nature of reality. This perception of flux and flow can evoke genuine wonder at the processes that constitute our everyday experience. Human relationships also contain sources of everyday enchantment that often go unnoticed. When we interact with others through the filter of familiarity and expectations, we miss the opportunity to perceive the extraordinary complexity and mystery present in each person. By bringing fresh attention to conversations and interactions, we might notice subtle expressions, unique perspectives, or unexpected insights that reveal the depth within seemingly ordinary exchanges. Many Buddhist practitioners report that relationships with family members, colleagues, and even strangers take on new dimensions of interest when approached with genuine curiosity rather than habitual perception. The body itself represents a source of everyday wonder that most people overlook. Simply bringing awareness to the sensation of breathing, the rhythmic, automatic process that continues throughout our lives, can evoke genuine amazement at the body's intricate functioning. Feeling the heart beating, noticing the complex coordination required for walking, or observing how cuts and scrapes heal without conscious effort. These ordinary bodily processes contain profound wonder when perceived with fresh attention. Buddhist meditation practices often begin with body awareness precisely because the body offers such accessible pathways to direct experience beyond conceptual thinking. Technology and modern conveniences that we typically take for granted can also become sources of wonder when perceived with fresh attention. The fact that clean water flows from a tap, that electricity powers our homes, or that devices connect us instantly with people around the world, these everyday realities would seem miraculous to people from earlier times. Buddhist perspectives encourage us to notice the extraordinary nature of these seemingly ordinary aspects of modern life rather than taking them for granted. This shift in perception cultivates both wonder and gratitude for what might otherwise be invisible conveniences. Even challenges and difficulties contain potential for surprise and discovery when approached with openness rather than resistance. Buddhist teachers often point out how unexpected insights can emerge from navigating obstacles or limitations that initially seem merely frustrating. A delay might create an opportunity for a meaningful conversation with a stranger. A detour might reveal a beautiful location you wouldn't otherwise have discovered. A mistake might lead to a creative solution better than your original plan. This doesn't mean denying the real difficulties these situations present, but rather remaining open to the unexpected possibilities they might contain. Buddhist perspectives on everyday enchantment don't require adopting religious beliefs or engaging in complex practices. Even simple shifts in attention can begin revealing the wonder hidden in plain sight within ordinary experiences. Pausing occasionally throughout the day to notice sensory details, approaching routine tasks with fresh curiosity, or deliberately looking for something new in familiar environments. These accessible practices gradually train perception to recognize the extraordinary within the ordinary. Many people find that even 5 minutes of deliberate attention to everyday wonders can shift their overall experience of daily life. Research in positive psychology increasingly confirms the benefits of this approach to everyday experience. Studies show that people who regularly notice and appreciate ordinary pleasures and interesting details report greater overall life satisfaction and resilience during challenging times. This scientific validation aligns with what Buddhist wisdom has long suggested, that our experience of life depends less on extraordinary circumstances than on how we relate to ordinary moments. By cultivating the capacity to find wonder in everyday life, we develop a sustainable source of joy that doesn't depend on special conditions or constant novelty. The beauty of the Buddhist approach to everyday enchantment lies in its accessibility and sustainability. Unlike seeking wonder through extraordinary experiences that might be expensive, rare, or environmentally impactful, finding wonder in everyday life requires no special resources or circumstances. This approach makes genuine enchantment available regardless of financial means, physical abilities, or life circumstances. It also offers a renewable source of interest and engagement that doesn't depend on constantly seeking new experiences, but rather on perceiving familiar experiences with fresh awareness. The capacity to find wonder and surprise in ordinary life naturally connects to another key Buddhist insight: the freedom that comes from abandoning our need to control outcomes. Many of us spend enormous amounts of mental energy trying to control circumstances that are ultimately beyond our influence. This tendency to grasp tightly to the illusion of control creates significant suffering when reality inevitably unfolds differently than our plans. Buddhist wisdom offers a liberating alternative: the discovery that genuine freedom often comes from loosening our grip on control and developing a more fluid relationship with life's uncertainties. The desire to control outcomes runs deep in human psychology. From early childhood experiences of helplessness, we develop strategies to maximize predictability and minimize uncertainty in our lives. These efforts serve important functions: planning, organizing, and directing our actions toward meaningful goals all represent valuable human capacities. The problem arises when this healthy capacity for directed action transforms into rigid attachment to specific outcomes. Buddhist psychology distinguishes between skillful intention, which guides our efforts without attachment to results, and unskillful control, which creates suffering through inflexible expectations. Our modern world tends to reinforce the illusion of control in countless ways. Technological advances allow unprecedented management of our physical environment. We control room temperature with thermostats, access information instantly with search engines, and connect with people anywhere through communication devices. These genuine advances sometimes create the misleading impression that all aspects of life can and should be controlled with similar precision. Marketing messages further reinforce this illusion, suggesting that with the right products, services, or techniques, we can control everything from our appearance to our emotions to others' perceptions of us. The suffering created by excessive attachment to control becomes apparent when we examine common experiences of frustration and anxiety. Traffic jams trigger disproportionate anger when we feel our control over timing threatened. Uncertainty about health issues creates intense anxiety as we face the limits of our ability to guarantee specific outcomes. Relationship conflicts escalate when we try to control others' behaviors or feelings rather than accepting their autonomy. Whether disrupting our plans provokes frustration beyond the actual inconvenience involved. In each case, suffering arises not just from the circumstances themselves, but from our resistance to accepting what we cannot control. Buddhist wisdom offers a radically different relationship with control and uncertainty, not abandoning responsibility or effort, but holding our desires for specific outcomes more lightly. This approach distinguishes between areas where we have genuine influence and those where we don't. We can control our own actions, words, and intentions, but not their results. We can make healthy choices about our bodies, but not guarantee freedom from illness. We can act with kindness and integrity in relationships, but not control how others respond. This clear discernment allows us to focus our energy where it can be effective rather than exhausting ourselves fighting against reality. The paradox that Buddhist practitioners often discover is that loosening our grip on control frequently leads to more effective action, not less. When we're not rigidly attached to specific outcomes, we can respond more flexibly to changing circumstances. Athletes describe this as being in the zone, a state of focused yet relaxed attention that performs better than anxious control. Artists and musicians experience flow states where their best work emerges when they let go of rigid control and allow creativity to move through them. Even in business and organizational contexts, leaders often find that excessive control stifles innovation and adaptation, while appropriate autonomy fosters better results. The metaphor of swimming with the current rather than against it captures this Buddhist approach to effective action without rigid control. This doesn't mean passive acceptance of everything as it is or abandoning efforts to create positive change. Rather, it suggests working skillfully with the conditions and energies already present rather than exhausting ourselves fighting against them. A skilled kayaker doesn't try to stop the river's flow but learns to navigate within it, using its energy while avoiding obstacles. Similarly, we can pursue meaningful goals and values while remaining flexible about exactly how they manifest. Practical methods for loosening our grip on control begin with awareness of when we're becoming attached to specific outcomes. Physical tension often signals this attachment: clenched jaw, tight shoulders, shallow breathing all indicate we're literally holding tight to our need for control. Simply noticing these physical signs creates space to consciously relax and open to alternative possibilities. Phrases like "let's see what happens" or "I'll do my best and accept the outcome" can help shift from rigid control to flexible intention. Many people find it helpful to regularly ask themselves, is this something I can control, or do I need to practice acceptance? Developing comfort with uncertainty represents another essential aspect of abandoning excessive control. Our minds typically treat uncertainty as a threat, creating anxiety and urgent attempts to establish certainty even when that's not possible. Buddhist practices help us recognize that uncertainty is not only unavoidable, but contains potential for positive surprises and growth. Meditation cultivates the capacity to stay present with uncertain or ambiguous situations without immediately trying to resolve them through premature conclusions or actions. This growing comfort with not knowing creates psychological space for wisdom to emerge naturally. Relationships offer particularly rich opportunities to practice loosening our grip on control. Many relationship difficulties stem from attempts to control others' behavior, feelings, or perceptions rather than accepting their fundamental autonomy. Parents struggle with allowing children age-appropriate independence. Partners try to change each other rather than accepting differences. Friends feel betrayed when others don't meet their unspoken expectations. The Buddhist approach suggests focusing on our own conduct, speaking truthfully, listening deeply, acting with kindness while releasing attachment to how others respond. This shift from controlling others to taking responsibility for ourselves creates healthier, more authentic connections. The freedom that emerges from abandoning excessive control doesn't happen overnight. It develops gradually through consistent practice and gentle self-awareness. Many people find it helpful to start with small, low-stakes situations, perhaps experimenting with taking an unplanned route home, trying a restaurant without researching reviews first, or allowing a day to unfold without detailed planning. These small exercises in loosening control build the confidence and capacity to apply the same principles to more significant life areas. Over time, this practice develops a profound trust in our ability to respond skillfully to whatever arises, rather than needing to control everything in advance. This gradual development of trust in our ability to respond skillfully without excessive control naturally connects with emerging scientific research on happiness and expectations. While Buddhist insights about expectations emerged from centuries of contemplative inquiry, modern science now offers complementary perspectives through rigorous research methods. The convergence of these ancient wisdom traditions with contemporary scientific findings creates a compelling case for reconsidering our relationship with expectations. Research in psychology, neuroscience, and behavioral economics increasingly confirms that how we set and manage expectations plays a crucial role in our subjective well-being. Studies consistently show that the gap between expectations and outcomes functions as a primary determinant of happiness or disappointment. When reality meets or exceeds our expectations, we experience positive emotions. When reality falls short of expectations, we experience negative emotions. This straightforward mechanism operates across countless domains of human experience, from consumer purchases to romantic relationships to career achievements. Neuroscience research has identified specific brain circuits involved in processing expectations and their outcomes. The brain's reward system, centered in regions like the ventral striatum and involving neurotransmitters like dopamine, responds not just to positive experiences themselves, but to how those experiences compare to prior expectations. A genuinely positive experience might trigger a disappointing neural response if it falls short of expectations, while an objectively modest experience might generate significant pleasure if it exceeds expectations. This neurological reality explains why the same objective circumstances can produce drastically different emotional responses, depending on the expectations someone brings to the situation. Behavioral economists have documented how expectations create what they call reference points that significantly influence our subjective experience. These reference points often form without conscious awareness through mechanisms like social comparison, past experiences, and media exposure. Once established, these reference points powerfully shape our perceptions of whether current circumstances feel satisfying or disappointing. Studies show that rising prosperity often fails to increase happiness when expectations rise at the same rate or faster than actual improvements in conditions, a phenomenon observed in both developing and wealthy nations. Cognitive psychologists have identified specific patterns in how expectations form and function. Confirmation bias leads us to notice information that supports our existing expectations while overlooking contradictory evidence. Anchoring effects cause initial expectations to exert disproportionate influence on subsequent judgments. Availability bias means recent or vivid experiences shape our expectations more strongly than statistical probabilities. These cognitive patterns often operate automatically unless we deliberately cultivate awareness of them, explaining why problematic expectations persist even when they repeatedly create disappointment. Research on anticipation and consumption shows that expectations significantly influence how we experience events both before and during their occurrence. People often derive substantial pleasure from anticipating positive experiences, sometimes enjoying the anticipation more than the experience itself. However, excessively high expectations frequently diminish enjoyment of the actual experience through constant comparison with imagined ideals. Studies of vacations, special meals, and entertainment experiences consistently demonstrate how expectations shape not just our emotional responses, but even our memories of these events. Happiness researchers have identified several problematic expectation patterns that reliably produce dissatisfaction. The hedonic treadmill describes how expectations adjust rapidly to improved circumstances, requiring ever-increasing achievements or acquisitions to maintain the same happiness level. Social comparison refers to judging our circumstances against others rather than absolute standards, creating a moving target that's impossible to satisfy definitively. Future focus involves perpetually placing happiness conditions in the future rather than experiencing present circumstances with openness. Research on resilience and well-being identifies specific expectation management strategies associated with greater life satisfaction. Studies show that maintaining flexible expectations, having goals and preferences without rigid attachment to specific outcomes, correlates with both higher average happiness and faster recovery from disappointments. The ability to adjust expectations based on changing circumstances rather than clinging to original expectations correlates strongly with emotional resilience. Cultivating appreciation for multiple possible outcomes rather than fixating on a single best scenario also predicts greater satisfaction with actual results. Positive psychology research highlights the benefits of what researchers call positive constructive daydreaming, a form of expectation setting that imagines positive possibilities without rigid attachment to specific outcomes. This approach contrasts with both anxiety-driven rumination about negative possibilities and fantasy-based expectations disconnected from realistic considerations. Studies show this balanced approach to future thinking supports both psychological well-being and effective action toward meaningful goals. This scientific finding aligns remarkably well with the Buddhist distinction between skillful intention and unskillful attachment to outcomes. Mindfulness research offers particularly strong scientific support for Buddhist approaches to expectations. Multiple studies demonstrate that mindfulness meditation and related practices help people recognize when they're forming expectations, observe how expectations influence their experience, and maintain greater equanimity when expectations aren't met. Brain imaging studies show that regular mindfulness practice changes activity in regions associated with expectation management, suggesting these practices create lasting changes in how people relate to expectations rather than just temporary effects. The science of happiness doesn't suggest eliminating all expectations, which would be neither possible nor desirable given how human cognition functions. Instead, research points toward cultivating what psychologists call psychological flexibility, the ability to hold expectations lightly, adjust them when appropriate, and maintain well-being even when reality differs from expectations. This scientific concept closely parallels Buddhist teachings on non-attachment and equanimity, demonstrating how ancient wisdom and contemporary research have converged on similar insights through different methods of inquiry. This fascinating convergence between scientific research and Buddhist wisdom creates a solid foundation for practical approaches to working with expectations in daily life. Both traditions ultimately point towards similar conclusions. Rigid expectations frequently create unnecessary suffering, while flexible expectations and present moment awareness foster greater well-being. The scientific validation of these principles makes them more accessible to people who might not connect with traditional Buddhist frameworks but still seek evidence-based approaches to increasing happiness and reducing suffering in their lives. One of the most powerful practices for working with expectations in daily life involves cultivating genuine curiosity and wonder about our experiences. When we approach situations with curiosity rather than preset expectations, we create mental space to discover unexpected value and meaning. This approach doesn't require complex techniques or special circumstances. Simple shifts in attention and intention can significantly change how we relate to everyday experiences. Cultivating curiosity begins with recognizing how often we operate on autopilot, assuming we already know what to expect from familiar situations, people, and environments. This assumption of familiarity creates a kind of perceptual blindness that prevents us from noticing new aspects of even the most routine experiences. By deliberately adopting what psychologists call a beginner's mind, approaching situations as if experiencing them for the first time, we can break through this automatic processing and discover fresh dimensions of everyday life. Practical methods for cultivating curiosity often involve asking open questions about experiences we normally take for granted. Instead of assuming you know exactly how your morning coffee will taste, you might ask, "What flavors do I actually notice in this cup?" Rather than interacting with a family member through the filter of past experiences, you might wonder, "Who is this person today? And what might I discover if I listen with fresh attention?" These questions create space for genuine discovery beyond the limitations of habitual perception and expectation. Curiosity thrives when we temporarily suspend our normal categories and judgments. We typically process experiences through rapid categorization, labeling things as good or bad, interesting or boring, relevant or irrelevant to our concerns. While this automatic sorting helps us navigate life efficiently, it also creates a filter that screens out potentially valuable aspects of experience. By deliberately pausing these quick judgments and allowing experiences to unfold without immediate categorization, we create conditions for genuine discovery and appreciation. The quality of our attention plays a crucial role in cultivating curiosity. Fragmented, distracted attention makes genuine curiosity nearly impossible, as we're never fully present with any single experience long enough to discover its subtleties and nuances. Simple practices like single tasking instead of multitasking, taking short breaks from digital devices, or setting aside dedicated time for undistracted exploration of interests can significantly enhance our capacity for curiosity. Even 5 minutes of focused attention on an ordinary object or activity can reveal surprising discoveries that scattered attention would miss. Physical environments influence our capacity for curiosity in ways we often overlook. Cluttered, noisy spaces with multiple competing demands on attention generally inhibit curiosity, while spaces that invite focused exploration support it. Many people find that spending time in natural environments particularly stimulates curiosity and wonder because natural settings offer complex, multi-sensory experiences that reward close attention. Even in urban environments, creating small curiosity zones in your home or workplace, areas deliberately designed to invite exploration and discovery, can nurture this quality of mind. The humility required for genuine curiosity represents a particular challenge in contemporary culture, which often emphasizes projecting confidence and expertise rather than acknowledging the limitations of our knowledge. True curiosity requires admitting that we don't already know everything about a situation, person, or subject, an admission that can feel uncomfortable in achievement-oriented contexts. Cultivating comfort with phrases like, "I don't know, but I'd like to learn," or "I'm curious about your perspective on this," creates psychological space for genuine discovery beyond the limitations of assumed knowledge. Our relationship with time significantly affects our capacity for curiosity. When rushing through experiences with primary focus on completing tasks or reaching destinations, we create conditions that make curiosity nearly impossible. Building small margins of unstructured time into daily routines, leaving 10 minutes early for appointments, creating buffer time between activities, or occasionally taking the longer route to destinations provides space for spontaneous discovery. Many people find that deliberate slowing down, even for brief periods, dramatically enhances their capacity to notice interesting details and explore unexpected possibilities. Curiosity often flourishes in social contexts that support open exploration and discovery. Surrounding yourself with people who ask interesting questions, notice overlooked details, or approach familiar situations with fresh perspectives can significantly enhance your own capacity for curiosity. Conversations that involve genuine exchange of observations and questions rather than merely trading opinions or established viewpoints create conditions for mutual discovery. Even established relationships can become sources of renewed curiosity when we deliberately set aside assumptions about already knowing the other person completely. The link between curiosity and playfulness offers another avenue for cultivating wonder in daily life. Children naturally approach the world with playful curiosity, exploring possibilities without rigid attachment to outcomes or judgments. Adults can deliberately reintegrate this playful quality through simple practices like taking new routes to familiar destinations, temporarily adopting different perspectives on routine situations, or engaging in creative activities without concern for producing specific results. This playful approach often reveals possibilities that more serious, goal-oriented attention might overlook. Perhaps most importantly, curiosity requires psychological safety, freedom from excessive self-criticism about not knowing enough or not being interesting enough. Many people report that their natural curiosity becomes blocked by internal judgments about what they should already know or what questions might make them appear ignorant. Creating an internal environment of acceptance for your own learning process, including the inevitable awkwardness of exploring unfamiliar territory, provides essential foundation for genuine curiosity to flourish. This self-acceptance doesn't mean abandoning discernment or standards, but rather creating space for authentic exploration without premature judgment. The rewards of cultivating curiosity extend far beyond simply making life more interesting. Research shows that curious people typically demonstrate greater creativity, problem-solving capacity, and resilience when facing challenges. Curiosity creates natural bridges between different knowledge domains, leading to innovative connections and insights. On an interpersonal level, approaching others with genuine curiosity typically creates more authentic and satisfying relationships than interaction based primarily on assumed knowledge or judgment. Perhaps most relevant to our discussion of expectations, curiosity creates a natural antidote to rigid expectations by continuously revealing how reality exceeds our limited mental models in surprising and often delightful ways. This ability to discover how reality exceeds our limited mental models connects directly with another essential Buddhist teaching, the practice of acceptance as a path to happiness. While curiosity opens us to discovering what we don't yet know, acceptance allows us to make peace with reality exactly as we find it. These complementary practices work together to free us from the suffering created by rigid expectations and resistance to what is. Acceptance in Buddhist practice differs significantly from how many people understand the term in everyday language. It's not passive resignation or giving up on positive change. Rather, acceptance means clearly recognizing and acknowledging the reality of our current situation without the additional suffering created by denial, resistance, or aversion. This clear seeing creates a solid foundation for effective action based on things as they actually are, rather than how we wish they were. The first step in practicing acceptance involves honestly acknowledging current reality without sugarcoating or catastrophizing. Many people habitually avoid fully facing difficult situations, using distraction, minimization, or excessive optimism to avoid uncomfortable truths. Others go to the opposite extreme, catastrophizing challenges by imagining worst-case scenarios or seeing situations as more terrible than they objectively are. True acceptance requires the courage to see things clearly, neither better nor worse than they actually are in the present moment. Physical sensations provide an accessible starting point for practicing acceptance. When experiencing discomfort like minor pain, cold, or hunger, we can observe our automatic tendency to resist these sensations through tension, complaint, or distraction. By instead bringing gentle attention directly to the sensations themselves, noticing their qualities, locations, and changing nature, we discover that much of our suffering comes not from the sensations themselves, but from our resistance to them. Many people report that physical discomfort becomes more manageable when met with acceptance rather than resistance. Emotional acceptance represents a particularly powerful practice for reducing unnecessary suffering. When difficult emotions like sadness, anger, or fear arise, we typically add secondary suffering through self-judgment. I shouldn't feel this way. Resistance. I need to make this feeling stop. Or identification. This feeling defines who I am. The practice of emotional acceptance involves creating space to feel emotions directly without these additional layers of reactivity. This doesn't mean wallowing in difficult feelings or expressing them unskillfully, but rather allowing them to move through us naturally without unnecessary resistance. Life circumstances beyond our control offer particularly important opportunities for practicing acceptance. Health challenges, economic conditions, natural events, or others' decisions often can't be immediately changed regardless of our preferences. When we resist accepting these realities, we create inner conflict that depletes energy while accomplishing nothing constructive. Accepting what is doesn't prevent taking constructive action where possible, but it prevents the wasteful struggle against aspects of reality that can't be immediately changed. As the familiar saying goes, acceptance gives us the clarity to change what we can, the peace to accept what we can't, and the wisdom to know the difference. Acceptance practice often reveals how our mental narratives create suffering beyond what the actual situation requires. When facing challenges, our minds typically generate stories about what difficulties mean about us, others, or life itself. These stories: this always happens to me. I'll never recover from this. People can't be trusted, often create more suffering than the original situation. Acceptance involves recognizing these narratives as mental constructions rather than objective reality. This recognition creates space to engage with the actual situation more directly and effectively. The relationship between acceptance and change represents a paradox that initially confuses many practitioners. We might wonder, if I accept things as they are, won't that prevent me from making positive changes? Experience and research suggest the opposite. Genuine acceptance often creates the psychological conditions necessary for effective change. By fully acknowledging current reality without resistance, we gather accurate information, conserve emotional energy, and identify the most effective points for intervention. The alternative, taking action from a place of denial or aversion, typically leads to less effective outcomes based on incomplete understanding of the situation. Interpersonal relationships benefit tremendously from the practice of acceptance. Much relationship conflict stems from trying to change others rather than accepting who they actually are. When we mentally insist that partners, family members, colleagues, or friends conform to our expectations, we create conditions for perpetual disappointment. Acceptance means recognizing that others are separate beings with their own nature, preferences, and journey. This recognition doesn't mean tolerating genuinely harmful behavior, but it creates space to relate to the actual person rather than our projection of who we think they should be. Self-acceptance represents perhaps the most transformative application of this practice. Many people maintain ongoing inner conflict through harsh self-judgment and unrealistic expectations about who they should be. This inner division creates constant background stress and prevents authentic engagement with life. Self-acceptance involves acknowledging our actual strengths, limitations, preferences, and challenges without the additional suffering of self-rejection. As with other forms of acceptance, self-acceptance doesn't prevent positive growth and change, paradoxically. It creates the supportive inner conditions that make genuine development possible. Practicing acceptance doesn't mean abandoning discernment or ethical standards. We can clearly recognize harmful behaviors or conditions while still accepting that they currently exist. This clear seeing allows us to respond with wisdom rather than blind reactivity. The Buddhist tradition distinguishes between accepting that something exists in the present moment and condoning or approving of it. This distinction allows us to work effectively for positive change without the additional suffering created by denial or rage against current reality. Research increasingly confirms the psychological benefits of acceptance practices. Studies show that acceptance-based approaches effectively address conditions ranging from chronic pain to anxiety disorders to relationship difficulties. Brain imaging research demonstrates that acceptance practices activate regions associated with emotional regulation while reducing activity in areas linked to distress and reactivity. These findings suggest that the ancient Buddhist emphasis on acceptance aligns with our emerging scientific understanding of psychological well-being. The practice of acceptance requires ongoing effort rather than one-time accomplishment. Our minds naturally gravitate toward wanting things to be different than they are, requiring patient, persistent redirection toward accepting reality as we find it. Many people find it helpful to incorporate brief acceptance practices throughout their day, pausing to acknowledge traffic conditions without resistance, accepting a colleague's personality traits without frustration, or making peace with minor physical discomforts without complaint. These small practices gradually develop the habit of meeting reality with clarity and equanimity rather than automatic resistance. The freedom that comes from genuine acceptance creates space for a different relationship with uncertainty, another key dimension of Buddhist wisdom. While our minds typically treat uncertainty as a problem to be solved, Buddhist teachings suggest that uncertainty represents a fundamental aspect of reality that can actually become a source of wisdom when approached skillfully. Uncertainty pervades human experience at every level. Despite our best efforts at prediction and control, we cannot know with absolute certainty what will happen in the next moment, hour, or year. Health, relationships, career circumstances, economic conditions, and countless other factors remain inherently unpredictable beyond limited parameters. Even our own thoughts, emotions, and reactions often surprise us, emerging in ways we couldn't have anticipated. This fundamental uncertainty creates significant anxiety for many people, leading to excessive planning, rumination, or avoidance behaviors aimed at establishing illusory certainty. Buddhist teachings on impermanence, anicca, directly address our uncomfortable relationship with uncertainty. These teachings point out that constant change isn't a design flaw in the universe, but its fundamental nature. Everything we experience, from physical objects to relationships to our own bodies and minds, exists in continuous transformation rather than static permanence. When we resist this basic reality by demanding certainty and permanence, we create unnecessary suffering. Conversely, when we align our understanding with the uncertain, changing nature of experience, we discover a more harmonious relationship with reality. Our discomfort with uncertainty often stems from mistaking the conceptual maps we create for the territory they represent. Our minds constantly generate models of how reality works, using past experiences to predict future outcomes. These models serve important functions but remain inherently limited and provisional. Buddhist wisdom suggests holding these mental models lightly rather than mistaking them for complete or definitive representations of reality. This lighter relationship with conceptual understanding creates space for genuine discovery beyond our existing knowledge. The Buddhist approach to uncertainty differs significantly from simply tolerating it as an unavoidable problem. Rather, these teachings suggest that embracing uncertainty actually creates conditions for wisdom, creativity, and authentic engagement with life. When we acknowledge that we don't know exactly how situations will unfold, we become more attentive to what's actually happening rather than merely confirming existing expectations. This attentiveness allows us to respond appropriately to what each moment actually requires rather than following preset scripts based on assumed knowledge. Many Buddhist traditions deliberately cultivate what Zen practitioners call don't know mind, a quality of open awareness that remains receptive to possibilities beyond our current understanding. This mental state doesn't reject existing knowledge or reasonable planning, but holds them within a larger context of acknowledged uncertainty. Practices like meditation develop this capacity by training attention to notice when we're clinging to certainty and gently releasing into more open awareness. This quality of mind proves especially valuable during times of transition, challenge, or unexpected change. Our cultural conditioning often associates uncertainty with danger and certainty with safety, creating anxiety when faced with the unknown. Buddhist psychology offers a profound reframing of this relationship, suggesting that our attempt to establish absolute certainty often creates more insecurity than accepting fundamental uncertainty. When we base our sense of security on conditions remaining certain and predictable, we remain perpetually vulnerable to the inevitable changes and surprises that life presents. Conversely, developing comfort with uncertainty creates a more resilient foundation that can withstand changing circumstances without excessive distress. Specific meditation practices help develop greater comfort with uncertainty. Open awareness meditation involves resting attention in the present moment without trying to control or predict what will arise next in consciousness. This practice gradually accustoms the mind to remaining stable and present even when unable to anticipate what comes next. Similarly, contemplating impermanence through direct observation of constantly changing phenomena, from physical sensations to thoughts to environmental conditions, helps align our understanding with life's inherently uncertain nature. The wisdom of uncertainty becomes particularly relevant during major life transitions and challenges. Job changes, relocations, relationship shifts, health diagnoses, or other significant changes often trigger anxiety precisely because they involve facing the unknown. Buddhist approaches to uncertainty suggest meeting these situations with an attitude of curious exploration rather than fearful contraction. This doesn't mean denying real challenges or abandoning practical planning, but rather maintaining psychological flexibility that allows responding to circumstances as they actually unfold rather than as we fear or hope they might. Relationships with others provide rich opportunities for practicing comfort with uncertainty. Much relationship anxiety stems from wanting definitive certainty about others' feelings, intentions, or future actions. Certainty that remains impossible given the complex and changing nature of human experience. Buddhist wisdom suggests that accepting the inherent uncertainty in all relationships actually creates conditions for more authentic connection. When we release our demand for absolute certainty about others, we can engage with them as they actually are in each moment rather than through the filter of our predictions and demands. Research in various fields increasingly confirms the value of developing comfort with uncertainty. Studies in creativity show that tolerance for ambiguity and uncertainty correlates strongly with innovative thinking and problem solving. Psychological research demonstrates that excessive need for certainty contributes to anxiety disorders, while practices that develop comfort with uncertainty reduce anxiety symptoms. Business research indicates that organizations maintaining flexibility amid uncertainty typically outperform those rigidly committed to predetermined plans regardless of changing conditions. The wisdom of uncertainty doesn't suggest abandoning knowledge, expertise, or reasonable planning. Rather, it encourages holding these valuable tools within a larger context of acknowledged limitations and openness to discovery. This balanced approach allows using existing knowledge while remaining receptive to new information that might contradict or expand our understanding. In rapidly changing fields from technology to medicine to environmental science, this combination of knowledge and acknowledged uncertainty often leads to more effective approaches than either rigid certainty or complete abandonment of existing understanding. The Buddhist perspective on uncertainty ultimately suggests that comfort with not knowing represents spiritual and psychological maturity rather than deficiency. Our cultural tendency to equate certainty with authority and confidence often pressures people to project greater certainty than they actually possess. Buddhist wisdom offers a different model, one where acknowledging the limits of our understanding demonstrates wisdom rather than weakness. This humble relationship with knowledge creates conditions for continuous learning and growth throughout life, preventing the stagnation that often accompanies assumed certainty. This humble relationship with knowledge naturally leads us to consider how we might transform our habitual expectations into a practice of genuine appreciation. While expectations focus on what might happen in the future and often create conditions for disappointment, appreciation directs attention to what's already present and available in our experience. Buddhist practice offers specific methods for making this transformative shift from expectation to appreciation, creating a fundamentally different relationship with our everyday experiences. The practice of transforming expectations into appreciation begins with recognizing how often our minds automatically orient toward what's missing or what could be better, rather than what's already available. This tendency creates a perpetual sense of insufficiency, a feeling that the present moment is somehow lacking and that satisfaction lies in some future condition. Buddhist psychology identifies this as a primary source of human dissatisfaction, describing it as a thirst, tanha, that can never be fully quenched through external conditions because it regenerates continuously through habitual thinking patterns. Gratitude practices offer concrete methods for redirecting attention from what's lacking to what's present. Many Buddhist practitioners begin or end their day by deliberately noting specific things they appreciate, from basic conditions like having food and shelter to more personal aspects like meaningful relationships or opportunities to learn and grow. This simple practice gradually rewires attentional habits, making appreciation more automatic and reducing the mind's tendency to focus primarily on perceived deficiencies. Research confirms that regular gratitude practices significantly increase subjective well-being while reducing anxiety and depression symptoms. Loving kindness meditation, metta, offers another powerful approach for cultivating appreciation instead of expectation. This practice systematically develops feelings of goodwill and appreciation first toward ourselves, then toward others, ranging from loved ones to neutral people to difficult relationships. Unlike expectation, which subtly demands specific conditions for happiness, metta practice develops unconditional appreciation for others exactly as they are, without requiring them to meet our expectations. Regular practitioners report that this approach transforms relationships by allowing them to genuinely value others' authentic qualities rather than measuring them against mental expectations. The transformation from expectation to appreciation requires working skillfully with our attention, which naturally gravitates toward novelty, problems, and potential threats rather than what's functioning well or providing steady support. Buddhist practitioners deliberately counterbalance this tendency by regularly bringing attention to easily overlooked positive aspects of experience, the reliability of natural processes, the support of community connections, the functioning of body systems, or the beauty accessible through our senses. This deliberate redirection of attention gradually becomes more natural through consistent practice, Our relationship with time fundamentally shapes our capacity for appreciation versus expectation. When constantly oriented toward future goals or outcomes, we miss experiencing the richness available in the present moment. Buddhist practices train the mind to fully inhabit current experience, rather than continuously projecting into anticipated futures or ruminating about past events. This present moment orientation doesn't prevent appropriate planning, but ensures that planning occurs within a context of appreciating current reality, rather than perpetually postponing satisfaction until future conditions are met. Physical practices that engage the senses provide accessible entry points for shifting from expectation to appreciation. Taking time to fully taste and savor food. Feel the sensations of movement during walking or exercise. Listen attentively to sounds in the environment. Or visually absorb natural beauty, all interrupt the mind's habit of racing ahead with expectations. These simple practices of sensory engagement train the capacity for present moment appreciation that can gradually extend to more complex aspects of experience. Many people find that even 5 minutes of deliberate sensory appreciation significantly shifts their overall mental state. The relationship between appreciation and expectation contains an interesting paradox. The less we demand specific outcomes through rigid expectations, the more we can genuinely appreciate whatever actually emerges. Many practitioners report that loosening their grip on specific expectations doesn't diminish their experience, but actually enhances it by allowing them to notice and value aspects they would have missed when focused narrowly on expected outcomes. This paradoxical abundance emerges not from changing external circumstances, but from transforming internal relationships with experience. Social environments significantly influence whether we orient toward appreciation or expectation. When surrounded by people focused primarily on what's lacking or what could be better, our own minds naturally adopt similar patterns. Conversely, connecting regularly with people who practice genuine appreciation helps reinforce this orientation. Many Buddhist practitioners deliberately create or join communities that support appreciation practices, whether through formal groups like meditation centers or simply through friendships with others committed to similar values. These supportive connections help sustain appreciation practices when cultural messages continuously pull toward dissatisfaction and expectation. Research on hedonic adaptation, our tendency to quickly take positive circumstances for granted, highlights the importance of actively cultivating appreciation. Studies show that even significant positive life changes typically provide only temporary happiness boosts before we adapt and return to baseline satisfaction levels. Appreciation practices directly counter this adaptation by continuously bringing fresh attention to positive aspects of experience that would otherwise fade from awareness. This explains why deliberate appreciation practices often create more sustainable happiness than pursuing new circumstances or achievements that quickly become the new normal. The transformation from expectation to appreciation doesn't happen overnight, but develops gradually through consistent practice and gentle self-awareness. Many people find it helpful to incorporate brief appreciation practices throughout their day, perhaps taking a few moments in the morning to appreciate being alive, pausing before meals to appreciate having food, or reflecting before sleep on positive aspects of the day. These small, regular practices gradually shift attention habits from what's missing to what's present, creating a fundamentally different relationship with everyday experience. This shift in perspective opens us to another important dimension of Buddhist wisdom: the recognition that surprises and unexpected events often function as our most powerful teachers. When life unfolds differently than we anticipated, whether through unexpected challenges, unanticipated opportunities, or simply moments that break our habitual patterns, these surprises create unique openings for insight and growth that planned experiences rarely provide. The teaching potential of surprise stems from how unexpected events disrupt our automatic patterns of thinking and perceiving. Most of the time, our minds operate on a kind of autopilot, filtering experience through established patterns, expectations, and assumptions. This efficient processing helps us navigate familiar situations, but also limits our perception to what our existing mental models allow us to notice. Unexpected events temporarily interrupt this automatic processing, creating momentary openings where fresh perception and insight can emerge before our habitual patterns reassert themselves. Buddhist traditions contain numerous stories of awakening occurring through unexpected, even seemingly trivial events. A monk suddenly achieves insight hearing a pebble hit bamboo during sweeping. Another experiences enlightenment when his master unexpectedly slams a door on his leg. A third awakens when seeing peach blossoms while traveling through the mountains. These accounts might seem strange or exaggerated until we consider our own experiences of unexpected moments that suddenly shifted our perspective or revealed something we hadn't previously recognized despite its presence right before us. Zen Buddhism particularly emphasizes the teaching power of the unexpected through practices specifically designed to disrupt habitual thinking. Koans, paradoxical questions or statements that cannot be solved through conventional reasoning, deliberately create mental impasses that force practitioners beyond their usual conceptual frameworks. Zen masters often respond to students' questions in surprising, unconventional ways that prevent rehearsed understanding and create space for direct insight. These approaches reflect deep understanding of how genuine learning often occurs through surprise rather than through confirming what we already believe we know. The teaching function of surprise works through multiple mechanisms. Unexpected events expose assumptions and expectations we didn't realize we were holding until reality contradicted them. They reveal the limitations of our mental models and predictions about how things work. They demonstrate connections and possibilities our habitual thinking overlooked. They show us aspects of ourselves, reactions, fears, strengths, and capacities that remain hidden during predictable circumstances. Each of these revelations contains potential wisdom if we're willing to pay attention rather than immediately trying to re-establish control and predictability. Both pleasant and unpleasant surprises contain valuable teachings when approached with awareness. Unexpected difficulties often reveal our attachments, assumptions, and areas for growth more clearly than comfortable circumstances. Job losses expose career identifications we didn't realize were shaping our sense of self. Relationship challenges reveal expectations and patterns we were carrying unconsciously. Health issues demonstrate priorities and values that become clear only when normal functioning is disrupted. While these difficult surprises aren't experiences we would choose, they often catalyze growth and insight that might not have emerged otherwise. Pleasant surprises offer equally important teachings about possibility and openness. An unexpected connection with a stranger might reveal capacity for meaningful interaction we normally miss through habitual social patterns. A spontaneous experience of beauty or joy might demonstrate how accessible these qualities remain when we're not narrowly focused on specific goals or concerns. An unanticipated opportunity might reveal possibilities our planning mind would never have conceived. These positive surprises teach us about abundance and potential that exist beyond our limited expectations and plans. The Buddhist approach to learning from surprise involves developing what we might call surprise readiness, a quality of mind that remains receptive to unexpected teachings rather than immediately trying to fit new experiences into existing categories or dismissing what doesn't conform to expectations. This receptivity requires temporarily suspending both our desire to immediately understand experiences through familiar frameworks and our impulse to control or manage what happens next. This suspended state creates space for fresh perception and insight before our habitual patterns reassert themselves. Certain practices develop greater capacity to receive the teachings of surprise. Regular meditation cultivates the ability to observe experiences without immediately judging or categorizing them, creating space for fresh perception. Deliberate breaks from routine, taking different routes, changing normal sequences, or temporarily adopting different perspectives disrupt habitual patterns that might otherwise prevent noticing unexpected insights. Journaling about surprising experiences, especially noting initial reactions and subsequent reflections, helps extract and integrate their lessons rather than quickly forgetting them as we return to familiar patterns. the relationship between surprise and learning extends beyond individual psychology into communities and organizations. Groups that maintain openness to unexpected information, even when it contradicts established plans or beliefs, typically demonstrate greater adaptability and innovation than those that rigidly adhere to predetermined approaches regardless of emerging realities. Buddhist communities often institutionalize this principle through practices that deliberately introduce elements of spontaneity and surprise into otherwise structured environments, recognizing how these elements prevent spiritual practice from becoming rigid or dogmatic. The most profound teaching of surprise might be how it reveals the difference between our mental maps and the territory they represent. We navigate life through conceptual understanding that necessarily simplifies and categorizes complex reality. Surprise moments temporarily bridge the gap between our concepts and direct experience, showing aspects of reality our mental maps missed or misrepresented. This revelation doesn't negate the value of conceptual understanding, but demonstrates its provisional, limited nature. This humble relationship with our own knowledge creates conditions for continuous learning throughout life, rather than increasing rigidity as our concepts become more elaborate and entrenched. Learning from surprise doesn't require extraordinary experiences or dramatic revelations. Everyday surprises, an unexpected interaction, a sudden change in plans, an unanticipated reaction to a familiar situation, all contain teaching potential if met with receptive awareness. The practice involves simply pausing when something unexpected occurs, noticing our immediate reactions, and remaining open to what this moment might reveal beyond our existing understanding. This everyday approach to learning from surprise gradually develops wisdom that emerges from direct experience rather than accumulated concepts or second-hand knowledge. This everyday approach to learning from surprise naturally leads us to consider a broader perspective on planning and expectations. While we've explored how rigid expectations often create suffering, most of us still need to make plans in our daily lives. This raises an important question. How can we plan effectively without creating the kind of fixed expectations that lead to disappointment? Buddhist wisdom offers a balanced solution through what's traditionally called the middle way approach to planning. The middle way represents one of Buddhism's most practical and nuanced teachings. Rather than advocating extremes of either rigid planning or complete abandonment of direction, it offers a balanced approach that incorporates clear intention with flexibility about outcomes. This approach allows us to navigate life with both purpose and adaptability, avoiding the pitfalls of either excessive control or lack of direction. The middle way approach to planning provides a practical framework for engaging purposefully with life without creating unnecessary suffering through rigid expectations. At its core, this approach distinguishes between setting clear intentions versus attachment to specific outcomes. Intentions focus on the values, priorities, and general direction we wish to pursue, while remaining open about exactly how these manifest in changing circumstances. For example, you might set an intention to develop meaningful connections with others while remaining flexible about exactly who these connections will be with or precisely how they will develop. This creates a healthy balance between aimlessness and rigid expectation, providing direction without setting conditions for disappointment. In practical terms, the middle way approach often involves what we might call flexible planning, creating structures and directions that incorporate room for adaptation as circumstances change. Rather than making detailed plans extending far into the future based on assumptions about how things will unfold, this approach focuses on identifying next steps based on current information while remaining open to adjusting as new information emerges. This doesn't mean abandoning long-term vision, but rather holding that vision lightly while focusing on immediate actions aligned with your values and intentions. Buddhist teachings often describe this balance using the metaphor of a stringed instrument. If the strings are too tight, they break. If too loose, they won't play. Finding the right tension, neither too rigid nor too slack, creates optimal conditions for beautiful music. Similarly, Our approach to planning works best when finding a middle path between excessive control and lack of direction. This balanced approach creates space for both purposeful action and spontaneous response to changing conditions. The distinction between goals and expectations plays an important role in this approach. Goals identify destinations or achievements we're working toward, while expectations add specific requirements about exactly how and when these should manifest. The middle way suggests setting meaningful goals based on our values while releasing rigid expectations about the precise path to achieving them. This distinction might seem subtle but creates a fundamentally different relationship with both planning and outcome, one that allows for greater flexibility, creativity, and resilience when circumstances change. Mindfulness practices help develop the awareness needed to distinguish between healthy planning and rigid expectation. Through regular meditation, we learn to notice when planning crosses the line into creating fixed mental demands about how things should unfold. This awareness creates space to recognize when we're becoming attached to specific outcomes rather than remaining committed to our broader intentions. With practice, we can catch ourselves when planning becomes rigid and gently return to a more balanced, flexible approach. The middle way approach proves particularly valuable during times of significant change or uncertainty. When facing major life transitions, health challenges, economic shifts, or other unpredictable circumstances, rigid planning often creates additional stress through continuous revision and disappointment. The balanced approach allows maintaining direction and purpose while adapting fluidly to changing conditions. Many people report that this approach helps them navigate challenging times with less anxiety and greater resourcefulness than either detailed planning or complete lack of direction. This balanced approach to planning extends beyond individual decisions to relationships, work projects, and community initiatives. In collaborative contexts, the middle way suggests establishing clear shared intentions and values while remaining flexible about exactly how these manifest through specific actions and timelines. This creates space for incorporating diverse perspectives and responding creatively to emerging circumstances rather than forcing adherence to predetermined plans regardless of changing conditions. Organizations that adopt this approach typically demonstrate greater resilience and innovation than those that either operate without clear direction or adhere rigidly to plans despite changing realities. In daily practice, the middle way approach might involve regularly checking in with both your intentions and your attachment to outcomes. Questions like, "What truly matters to me in this situation?" help clarify underlying values and intentions, while "Am I open to different ways this might unfold?" helps identify where you might be holding rigid expectations. This reflection doesn't need to be time-consuming. Even brief moments of checking in with your relationship to plans and outcomes can significantly shift how you approach decisions and activities. The Buddhist emphasis on intention, sammasankappa, provides the foundation for this balanced approach. By clarifying and committing to wholesome intentions, those aligned with values like kindness, wisdom, and integrity, we establish meaningful direction without the brittleness of specific expectations. This clear intention creates a consistent thread through changing circumstances, allowing adaptation to specific situations while maintaining overall direction. Many practitioners report that focusing on intention rather than specific outcomes creates both greater flexibility and more consistent alignment with their deepest values. The freedom that comes from this balanced approach doesn't mean abandoning responsibility or commitment. Rather, it represents a more mature form of commitment, one that remains steadfast in values and intentions while demonstrating wisdom through adaptation to changing circumstances. This paradoxically creates greater reliability than rigid adherence to specific plans, as it allows adjusting means while maintaining commitment to underlying purpose. The middle way approach ultimately allows us to plan and act with both conviction and wisdom, creating conditions for effective engagement without unnecessary suffering. This balanced approach to planning finds beautiful expression in the rich tradition of Buddhist stories and parables about expectation and surprise. These teaching stories have been passed down through generations, offering memorable illustrations of how expectations shape our experience and how surprise often delivers unexpected wisdom. While these stories emerged from traditional Buddhist contexts, their psychological insights remain remarkably relevant to contemporary life challenges. One of the most widely shared Buddhist parables addressing expectations tells of a farmer whose horse runs away, prompting neighbours to express sympathy for his bad fortune. The farmer simply responds, "Who knows what's good or bad?" The next day, the horse returns, bringing several wild horses with it, and neighbours congratulate the farmer on his good luck. Again he responds, "Who knows what's good or bad?" When his son tries to ride one of the wild horses, he falls and breaks his leg, prompting more sympathetic comments about the farmer's misfortune. The farmer maintains his perspective. Who knows what's good or bad? Shortly after, military officials come to draft young men for war, but the son is spared because of his injury. The story continues with this pattern, illustrating how our judgments and expectations about events are continuously overturned as situations develop in unpredictable ways. This parable beautifully demonstrates how our immediate judgments about situations as good or bad reflect limited perspective rather than complete understanding. Each event the neighbours immediately labelled as fortunate or unfortunate later revealed unexpected dimensions that contradicted these quick judgments. The farmer's perspective represents freedom from rigid expectations about how events should unfold or what they ultimately mean, a freedom that spares him the emotional rollercoaster his neighbours experience through their quick judgments and fixed expectations. Another classic teaching story involves a Zen master named Hakuin who lived in a small village. When a teenage girl in the village became pregnant and named Hakuin as the father, villagers condemned him harshly. His only response was, "Is that so?" When the baby was born, villagers brought it to Hakuin, who had lost his reputation but accepted the child and cared for it diligently. A year later, the young mother confessed that the real father was a young man from the market. The parents came to Hakuin, apologised, and took the baby back. Hakuin's only response was again, "Is that so?" This story illustrates extraordinary equanimity amid dramatically changing circumstances and others' expectations, neither defending himself against false accusations nor expressing vindication when the truth emerged. This parable demonstrates remarkable freedom from both others' expectations and attachment to reputation or fair treatment. Hakuin's consistent response, "Is that so?" reflects neither denial of circumstances nor emotional reactivity to them, but simple acknowledgement of reality as it presents itself moment by moment. His willingness to care for the child without resentment, then release it without claiming vindication, illustrates profound non-attachment to how things should be based on conventional expectations of fairness or recognition. Zen tradition contains many stories of masters responding to students in unexpected ways that deliberately confound expectations. When students approach with carefully prepared questions expecting specific types of answers, masters might respond with apparently unrelated comments, sudden physical actions, or unexpected counter-questions. A monk asking about Buddha nature might receive a comment about the weather. A student seeking profound wisdom might be told to wash his bowl. Someone asking about meditation techniques might receive a sudden shout. These unconventional responses serve to break through conceptual thinking and expectations, creating space for direct insight beyond rehearsed understanding. These teaching encounters demonstrate how expectations often function as barriers to genuine understanding. Students typically approach teachers with preconceived ideas about what constitutes proper spiritual instruction, answers, or behavior. These expectations create filters that prevent fresh perception and direct insight. The unexpected responses deliberately disrupt these filters, creating momentary openings where direct understanding might occur before conceptual mind re-establishes its habitual patterns. Far from random or meaningless, these surprising responses represent skillful methods for addressing the specific barriers created by students' expectations. The famous parable of the raft addresses how expectations based on past usefulness can prevent appropriate present action. The Buddha describes a traveler who builds a raft to cross a dangerous river. After safely reaching the other shore, the traveler faces a decision about the raft that has served him well. Should he carry it on his head for the rest of his journey out of gratitude and attachment, or recognize that while useful for crossing the river, it now becomes a burden? The Buddha uses this story to illustrate how even spiritual teachings and practices, while useful at certain stages, can become hindrances if clung to inappropriately when circumstances change. This parable highlights how our expectations based on past experience can prevent responding appropriately to present circumstances. The raft unquestionably provided crucial assistance for crossing the river, creating a natural expectation of continued usefulness. The wisdom lies in recognizing when circumstances have changed sufficiently that former solutions no longer serve present conditions. This ability to assess current situations freshly rather than through expectations based on past experience represents a key aspect of Buddhist wisdom that these teaching stories consistently emphasize. The Buddhist teaching stories about expectations and surprise naturally lead us to consider how we might cultivate a stable mental quality that remains balanced amid life's inevitable ups and downs. While these parables illustrate the wisdom of releasing rigid expectations, they also point toward developing a specific quality of mind that Buddhist traditions call equanimity. This mental stability represents one of the most practical and valuable fruits of spiritual practice, allowing us to face both pleasant and unpleasant surprises with a steady, balanced response rather than being tossed about by emotional reactivity. Equanimity, upekkha, is considered one of 4 sublime states or highest qualities of mind in Buddhist tradition, alongside loving kindness, compassion, and appreciative joy. Unlike the common misunderstanding that equates equanimity with cold detachment or indifference, true equanimity combines mental stability with warm engagement. It's not about not caring, but about caring in a way that maintains balance regardless of external circumstances. This quality allows us to remain present and responsive during both life's disappointments and its delights without being overwhelmed by either. The foundation of equanimity lies in understanding the constantly changing nature of experience. When we deeply recognize that all conditions continuously arise and pass away, we become less likely to be shocked or destabilized by changes. Pleasure doesn't create excessive attachment because we recognize its impermanent nature. Pain doesn't create overwhelming aversion because we know it too will change. This balanced perspective doesn't deny the reality of pleasant and unpleasant experiences, but places them within a larger context of natural flux, reducing their power to create emotional extremes. Meditation practices specifically develop equanimity by training the mind to observe experiences without immediately reacting with craving or aversion. During formal meditation, practitioners notice physical sensations, emotions, and thoughts as they arise and pass away, neither clinging to pleasant experiences nor pushing away unpleasant ones. This repeated practice gradually develops the mental habit of balanced observation rather than automatic reactivity. Over time, this quality naturally extends beyond meditation sessions into everyday life situations that previously might have triggered strong emotional reactions. Body-based practices particularly help develop equanimity by creating a stable foundation amid changing mental states. By anchoring awareness in physical sensations, like breathing or feeling the contact points of the body with the floor, practitioners develop a constant reference point that remains accessible regardless of emotional weather. This embodied anchor provides crucial stability during emotionally challenging situations, preventing being swept away by intense reactions. Many practitioners report that simply returning attention to physical sensations during difficult moments helps restore balance and perspective. Life inevitably presents situations that test our equanimity, relationship conflicts, financial challenges, health issues, or other unexpected difficulties. Buddhist practitioners view these situations not just as problems to solve, but as valuable opportunities to strengthen equanimity through direct practice. By deliberately bringing balanced awareness to challenging experiences, we gradually develop confidence in our capacity to remain stable amid difficulty. This doesn't mean never experiencing strong emotions, but rather developing the ability to hold these emotions within a larger field of balanced awareness rather than becoming completely identified with them. The development of equanimity creates a profound shift in how we experience life's surprises. Without equanimity, unexpected negative events often trigger disproportionate distress through catastrophizing, rumination, and resistance. Unexpected positive events can similarly create unhelpful patterns of clinging, craving for repetition, or anxiety about potential loss. Equanimity allows experiencing both negative and positive surprises more directly, without these secondary layers of reactivity. This directness of experience creates greater clarity for appropriate response without the distortion of excessive emotion. Equanimity shouldn't be confused with resignation or passivity. In fact, many practitioners report that greater equanimity actually enables more effective action during challenging circumstances. Without the mental noise and emotional reactivity that typically accompany difficult situations, we can see more clearly what needs to be done and act decisively without hesitation or agitation. Like a surgeon who must maintain steady hands despite high-stakes circumstances, equanimity allows us to bring our full capabilities to demanding situations rather than being diminished by emotional overwhelm. Buddhist texts often compare equanimity to natural elements to illustrate its qualities. Equanimity resembles earth, which accommodates both beautiful gardens and garbage dumps without preference or aversion. It's like water, which receives both clean and dirty objects but isn't permanently coloured by them. It resembles fire, which transforms whatever is placed in it without discrimination. It's like air, which moves through perfumed gardens and sewers alike without becoming attached to either. These elemental metaphors highlight equanimity's capacity to engage fully with all experiences while maintaining fundamental stability. Relationships with others provide particularly important opportunities for practicing equanimity. When people act in ways that disappoint, frustrate, or hurt us, our habitual reactions often create additional problems beyond the initial situation. Equanimity allows us to experience the natural emotions these situations evoke while maintaining enough balance to respond wisely rather than reactively. Similarly, when experiencing strong positive emotions in relationships, equanimity helps us enjoy these fully without developing unhealthy attachment or possessiveness that ultimately harms connection. This balanced approach creates healthier relationship dynamics in all areas of life. Research increasingly confirms the psychological and physiological benefits of equanimity. Studies show that people who maintain greater emotional balance amid stressors demonstrate healthier immune function, cardiovascular measures, and stress hormone profiles than those who experience frequent emotional volatility. Brain imaging research reveals that long-term meditation practitioners show greater stability in brain regions associated with emotional regulation, suggesting that equanimity practices create lasting neural changes. These findings align with traditional Buddhist understanding that equanimity represents not just a spiritual quality, but a fundamental aspect of psychological and physical well-being. Developing equanimity requires both formal practice and everyday application. Many practitioners begin with guided meditations specifically focused on cultivating balanced awareness amid changing experiences. These formal practices develop basic capacity that can then be applied in increasingly challenging real-life situations. Starting with minor irritations or pleasures before gradually working with stronger emotions builds confidence and skill over time. Many find it helpful to have simple phrases or reminders like, "This too will pass," or "Can I hold this with balance?" to recall the practice during emotionally charged moments. The quality of equanimity directly influences our relationship with expectations and surprises. With greater equanimity, we can hold intentions and goals without rigid attachment to specific outcomes, allowing us to navigate life's inevitable changes with grace rather than brittleness. We can fully engage with both life's joys and challenges without being destabilized by either. This balanced engagement represents true freedom, not freedom from experiencing life's full range of circumstances, but freedom from being controlled by our reactions to them. Through cultivating equanimity, we develop an inner stability that remains trustworthy regardless of external conditions. This stable quality of mind naturally improves our relationships with others by freeing them from the burden of our expectations. When we develop greater equanimity and less rigid attachment to specific outcomes, our connections with friends, family members, romantic partners, and colleagues undergo a remarkable transformation. Without conscious recognition, most of our relationships carry heavy loads of expectations that create tension, disappointment, and missed opportunities for genuine connection. Buddhist insights about non-expectation offer practical approaches for liberating relationships from these burdens. The root of many relationship difficulties lies in our often unconscious expectations about how others should think, feel, speak, and behave. We develop detailed mental scripts about how interactions should unfold and experience disappointment or frustration when reality inevitably differs from these scripts. These expectations often remain unspoken, yet powerfully shape our reactions and responses. We might expect partners to anticipate our needs without communication, friends to share our exact priorities and perspectives, colleagues to work exactly as we would, or family members to embody our values and preferences. When people inevitably act according to their own nature rather than our expectations, we experience unnecessary suffering. Releasing others from our expectations doesn't mean abandoning healthy boundaries or clear communication about needs. Rather, it means distinguishing between reasonable agreements based on mutual understanding versus unilateral demands based on unexpressed expectations. When we clearly communicate our needs and preferences while remaining open to how others might meet these differently than anticipated, we create relationships characterized by authenticity rather than performance. This approach respects others' autonomy and unique nature while maintaining appropriate care for our own well-being. Communication patterns reveal how expectations shape relationship quality. When listening to others through the filter of expectations, we often miss what they're actually expressing because we're mentally comparing their words against what we expected or wanted to hear. This creates frequent misunderstandings and missed connections. By practicing mindful listening, giving full attention without immediately judging or comparing against expectations, we can hear others more accurately and respond to what they're actually communicating rather than to our projections. Many people report that this simple shift in listening quality dramatically improves relationship dynamics. Romantic relationships particularly suffer from excessive expectations, often fueled by media portrayals of idealized partnerships. We may unconsciously expect partners to fulfill roles from romantic stories, meet all our emotional needs, share all our interests, or anticipate our desires without explicit communication. These unrealistic expectations create conditions for continuous disappointment despite having genuinely caring partners. By recognizing and releasing these expectations, we can appreciate partners for who they actually are rather than measuring them against impossible standards. Many couples report significant relationship improvement simply by identifying and discussing previously unconscious expectations. Parent-child relationships also transform through releasing rigid expectations. Parents naturally develop visions of who their children should become and how they should behave, creating tension when children inevitably develop according to their own nature rather than parental scripts. Children similarly form expectations about parental behavior based on comparisons with other families or media portrayals. By recognizing these expectations and holding them more lightly, family members can appreciate each other's authentic qualities rather than experiencing perpetual disappointment about unmet expectations. This shift creates space for genuine connection based on who family members actually are rather than who they should be. Workplace relationships similarly benefit from reduced expectations about how colleagues, employees, or supervisors should behave. Different working styles, communication preferences, and priorities often create friction when we expect others to approach tasks as we would. By recognizing these differences as variations in style rather than deficiencies to be corrected, workplace relationships become more collaborative and less contentious. Many professionals report that consciously releasing rigid expectations about how work should be done while maintaining focus on results significantly improves team dynamics and reduces unnecessary conflict. Friendships flourish when freed from expectations about what friends should provide or how they should behave. We often unconsciously expect friends to share our opinions, be available according to our schedules, express care in specific ways, or prioritize the friendship exactly as we do. These expectations create disappointment when friends inevitably differ from our mental images. By appreciating friends for who they actually are rather than measuring them against expectations, we discover genuine connection beyond our limited conceptions. Many people report deeper, more satisfying friendships when they release friends from the burden of specific expectations while maintaining appropriate boundaries. The Buddhist practice of loving-kindness meditation, metta, offers a powerful method for transforming how we relate to others beyond expectations. This practice systematically develops goodwill and appreciation first toward ourselves, then toward loved ones, neutral people, difficult relationships, and eventually, all beings. Unlike expectations, which subtly demand that others fulfill specific conditions to earn our approval or affection, metta cultivates unconditional goodwill that appreciates others exactly as they are. Regular practitioners report that this approach creates relationships characterized by genuine acceptance rather than continuous evaluation against expectations. Research increasingly confirms the interpersonal benefits of reduced expectations. Studies show that couples with more realistic expectations and greater acceptance of differences report higher relationship satisfaction than those with idealized expectations, regardless of actual circumstances. Research on workplace dynamics demonstrates that teams emphasizing appreciation of diverse approaches outperform those demanding conformity to specific expectations. These findings support the Buddhist insight that releasing others from rigid expectations creates conditions for more authentic and satisfying connections across all relationship domains. The practice of freeing relationships from excessive expectations develops gradually through awareness, communication, and compassionate acceptance of both others and ourselves. When noticing disappointment or frustration in relationships, pausing to identify any underlying unspoken expectations creates opportunity for greater understanding and adjustment. Explicitly discussing expectations with important relationship partners helps bring unconscious assumptions into awareness where they can be examined and potentially modified. Perhaps most importantly, extending the same compassion to ourselves when we inevitably form expectations helps maintain a gentle, sustainable practice rather than creating additional self-judgment. This gentle approach to maintaining awareness of our expectations in relationships naturally extends to another powerful Buddhist practice, transforming expectations into genuine appreciation for what already exists in our lives. Rather than continuously looking ahead to what might happen next or what we hope to acquire, this practice directs attention to the abundance already present in our experience. This shift from expectation to appreciation represents one of the most direct paths to contentment available to us, regardless of external circumstances. The practice begins with recognizing how extensively our minds are conditioned to focus on what's missing or what could be improved rather than what's already available. This tendency creates a perpetual sense of insufficiency, a feeling that the present moment is somehow incomplete or lacking. We habitually think thoughts like, "I'll be happy when," or "things would be better if." These thought patterns direct attention toward an imagined future rather than present reality, creating a continuous cycle of delayed satisfaction, no matter what conditions we achieve. The mind quickly adjusts and begins seeking the next thing, preventing lasting contentment. Gratitude practices offer concrete methods for redirecting attention from what's lacking to what's present. You might start each morning by mentally noting 3 specific things you appreciate, from basic conditions like having clean water and shelter to more personal aspects like meaningful relationships or opportunities for growth. This simple practice gradually rewires attentional habits, making appreciation more automatic and reducing the mind's tendency to focus primarily on perceived deficiencies. Many people find that keeping a physical gratitude journal enhances this effect by creating a tangible record of abundance that can be reviewed during times when the mind reverts to scarcity thinking. The quality of our attention fundamentally shapes whether we experience life through expectation or appreciation. When moving through daily activities with scattered, distracted attention, we typically miss the richness available in ordinary experiences. By contrast, bringing full, engaged attention to even simple activities reveals dimensions of experience that expectation-driven attention typically misses. The taste of a simple meal, the sensation of warm water during a shower, the colours and textures in familiar environments all contain richness that remains inaccessible when attention is primarily focused on future expectations rather than present experience. Our relationship with time powerfully influences whether we live through expectation or appreciation. When continuously oriented toward future outcomes, we miss experiencing the richness available in present moments. Buddhist practices train the mind to fully inhabit current experience rather than constantly projecting into anticipated futures. This present moment orientation doesn't prevent appropriate planning, but ensures that planning occurs within a context of appreciating current reality rather than perpetually postponing satisfaction until some future condition is met. The body offers an accessible starting point for transforming expectation into appreciation. Our bodies continuously perform countless complex functions that maintain life without requiring conscious management: breathing, circulating blood, healing wounds, digesting food, and countless other processes. By occasionally bringing appreciative attention to these ongoing processes rather than focusing exclusively on bodily imperfections or limitations, we can develop genuine gratitude for this remarkable vehicle of experience. Many practitioners report that simple practices like feeling the sensation of breathing or noticing the support provided by the ground beneath them quickly shift attention from expectation to appreciation. Relationships provide particularly rich opportunities for practicing appreciation rather than expectation. When relating to others primarily through expectations about how they should behave or what they should provide, we create conditions for continuous disappointment. By contrast, deliberately noticing and appreciating others' positive qualities exactly as they currently exist, without demanding that they conform to our expectations, we discover genuine connection beyond our limited conceptions. Many people report significantly improved relationships simply by shifting attention from what others aren't providing to what they genuinely appreciate about them as they actually are. Nature offers another powerful domain for practicing appreciation. When we pause to truly notice natural environments, whether a houseplant, neighborhood park, or wilderness area, with receptive attention rather than evaluation or expectation, we often discover a sense of wonder and sufficiency that expectation-driven attention misses. Many traditions recommend regular nature contact specifically because natural environments naturally evoke appreciation when approached with open attention. Even brief periods of mindful engagement with natural elements can significantly shift mental states from craving more to appreciating what already exists. The paradoxical relationship between expectation and appreciation contains an important insight. The less we demand specific conditions for happiness through rigid expectations, the more we can genuinely appreciate whatever actually emerges. Many practitioners report that loosening their grip on specific expectations doesn't diminish their experience but enhances it by allowing them to notice and value aspects they would have missed when focused narrowly on expected outcomes. This paradoxical abundance emerges not from changing external circumstances, but from transforming internal relationship with experience. Research on hedonic adaptation, our tendency to quickly take positive circumstances for granted, highlights the importance of actively cultivating appreciation. Studies show that even significant positive life changes typically provide only temporary happiness boosts before we adapt and return to baseline satisfaction levels. Appreciation practices directly counter this adaptation by continuously bringing fresh attention to positive aspects of experience that would otherwise fade from awareness. This explains why deliberate appreciation practices often create more sustainable happiness than pursuing new circumstances or achievements that quickly become the new normal. The transformation from expectation to appreciation doesn't happen overnight, but develops gradually through consistent practice and gentle self-awareness. Many people find it helpful to incorporate brief appreciation practices throughout their day, perhaps taking a few moments in the morning to appreciate being alive, pausing before meals to appreciate having food, or reflecting before sleep on positive aspects of the day. These small, regular practices gradually shift attention habits from what's missing to what's present, creating a fundamentally different relationship with everyday experience. This practice of appreciation naturally enhances our ability to navigate the inevitable changes and transitions that characterize human life. Change represents one of the few constants in our experience. Relationships begin and end. Careers develop and transform. Bodies age. Living situations shift, and unexpected events continuously reshape our circumstances. Buddhist approaches to these inevitable changes offer practical wisdom for maintaining balance and finding growth opportunities amid life's continuous transformations. The foundation of Buddhist approaches to change lies in deeply understanding and accepting impermanence, anicca, as a fundamental characteristic of existence rather than a problem to be solved. Everything we experience, from physical objects to relationships to our own bodies and minds, exists in continuous transformation rather than static permanence. By aligning our understanding with this basic reality instead of expecting stability where it cannot exist, we reduce unnecessary suffering created by resistance to natural change. This doesn't mean abandoning appropriate stability or commitment, but rather holding these within a larger context of acknowledging continuous transformation. Mindfulness practices develop our capacity to remain present during periods of significant change rather than getting lost in anxiety about the future or regret about the past. When facing transitions like relationship changes, career shifts, relocation, or health challenges, our minds typically generate extensive stories about what might happen or what went wrong, creating suffering beyond what the actual situation requires. Mindfulness training helps us recognize when we're creating these anxiety-producing narratives and gently return attention to present experience. This present moment orientation doesn't prevent appropriate planning, but ensures it happens from clear seeing rather than fear-based projection. The Buddhist understanding of interdependence, pratityasamutpada, offers another helpful perspective on navigating change. This principle recognizes that all conditions arise through complex networks of causes and conditions rather than through simple linear causality. When facing significant changes, this perspective helps us recognize the multiple factors involved rather than oversimplifying through blame or credit. This broader view typically reveals both challenges and opportunities within changing circumstances that might be missed through narrower perspectives. Many people report that this expanded view helps them respond more creatively and effectively to transitions rather than becoming stuck in simplistic narratives. Specific meditation practices help develop greater comfort with uncertainty during times of change. Open awareness meditation involves resting attention in the present moment without trying to control or predict what will arise next in consciousness. This practice gradually accustoms the mind to remaining stable and present, even when unable to anticipate what comes next. Similarly, deliberately contemplating impermanence through direct observation of constantly changing phenomena, from physical sensations to thoughts to environmental conditions, helps align our understanding with life's inherently uncertain nature. The Buddhist distinction between pain and suffering provides particularly valuable perspective during difficult changes. This teaching recognizes that pain, physical discomfort, loss, disappointment, represents an inevitable part of human experience that we cannot completely avoid. Suffering, however, comes from our relationship with these experiences, our resistance, aversion, or elaborate narratives about what pain means about us, others, or life itself. By distinguishing between unavoidable pain and optional suffering, we can work skillfully with difficult changes by accepting pain when necessary while reducing the additional layers of suffering created through resistance. Major life transitions particularly benefit from Buddhist approaches to change. During significant shifts like career changes, relationship transitions, geographic moves, or health adjustments, our typical reference points and routines often disappear, creating both disorientation and opportunity. Buddhist practices help us remain centered amid these shifting conditions by anchoring awareness in constants that remain available regardless of external changes, the sensation of breathing, awareness itself, or ethical values that transcend specific circumstances. Many people report that these anchoring practices provide crucial stability that allows them to navigate major transitions without becoming completely overwhelmed. Relationship changes, whether beginnings, endings, period, or significant transformations, often trigger our strongest reactions to impermanence. Buddhist approaches suggest neither clinging to relationships in unhealthy ways nor maintaining emotional distance to avoid potential loss, but rather engaging fully while maintaining awareness of their naturally changing nature. This balanced approach allows authentic connection without the suffering created by demanding permanence from inherently impermanent conditions. Many practitioners report that this perspective helps them navigate relationship transitions with greater wisdom and less unnecessary suffering than approaches based on either desperate clinging or fearful avoidance. Body changes and health transitions provide unavoidable lessons in impermanence throughout our lives. From minor illnesses to aging processes to more significant health challenges, our bodies continuously demonstrate change beyond our complete control. Buddhist practices offer specific approaches for working skillfully with these changes, bringing mindful attention to physical experiences without immediate aversion, maintaining compassion for ourselves during difficult transitions, and finding appropriate acceptance without surrendering agency where choices remain available. Many people with chronic health conditions or age-related changes report that these approaches significantly reduce suffering beyond the unavoidable physical discomfort their conditions entail. The Buddhist understanding of non-self, anatta, offers perhaps the most profound perspective on navigating life changes. This teaching points to how our sense of fixed, separate identity creates unnecessary suffering during transitions by generating stories about what changes mean about me and my life. By recognizing the fluid, interdependent nature of identity rather than clinging to rigid self-concepts, we can move through transitions with greater flexibility and less identity-based suffering. This doesn't mean abandoning practical identity or responsibility, but rather holding self-concept lightly enough to adapt appropriately as circumstances change. Research increasingly confirms the effectiveness of mindfulness-based approaches for navigating significant life transitions. Studies show that people trained in mindfulness techniques demonstrate greater resilience during major changes, including health diagnoses, relationship shifts, and career transitions. Brain imaging research reveals that regular meditation practice develops neural networks associated with adaptive responses to change while reducing activity in regions linked to rigid reactivity. These findings support the Buddhist insight that specific mental training can significantly enhance our capacity to navigate life's inevitable transitions with greater wisdom and less unnecessary suffering. This understanding of how mindfulness can help us navigate life's transitions naturally connects with another powerful Buddhist practice: cultivating grateful acceptance for the surprises and unexpected events that life continuously presents us. While our minds naturally categorize unexpected events as either positive or negative based on immediate preferences, Buddhist practice suggests a more nuanced approach that finds value in surprises of all kinds through grateful acceptance. This practice doesn't require spiritual beliefs but offers practical psychological skills for transforming our relationship with unexpectedness. At its core, grateful acceptance combines two powerful mental qualities: the clear recognition of reality as it actually presents itself, acceptance, and the capacity to find value or meaning in that reality, gratitude. When unexpected events occur, our default reactions typically involve either clinging to pleasant surprises or rejecting unpleasant ones. Grateful acceptance offers a middle way that neither grasps nor rejects, but instead receives experiences with balanced awareness that recognizes potential value beyond immediate preferences. This approach transforms our relationship with unexpectedness from resistance to receptivity. The practice begins with simply acknowledging reality as it actually presents itself, without the additional suffering created by denial, resistance, or elaborate narratives about what should have happened instead. This doesn't mean approving of harmful or difficult situations, but rather recognizing their existence as the necessary starting point for any effective response. Many people find it helpful to use simple phrases like, "This is what's happening now," or "This moment contains this experience," to facilitate this basic acknowledgement when facing unexpected situations. The gratitude aspect of this practice doesn't involve forced positive thinking or pretending difficulties aren't real. Instead, it involves genuinely looking for potential value, meaning, or growth opportunities within unexpected situations, whatever their initial appearance. This searching attitude keeps us engaged with experiences rather than shutting down or becoming overwhelmed. Even challenging surprises often contain unexpected gifts, perhaps revealing strengths we didn't know we had, connecting us with supportive people, or teaching important lessons we wouldn't have learned through more comfortable means. Unexpected challenges particularly benefit from grateful acceptance. When facing health issues, relationship difficulties, work problems, or other unwelcome surprises, our natural tendency toward resistance often adds psychological suffering beyond the inherent difficulty of the situation. By practicing acceptance of what cannot be immediately changed, combined with actively looking for constructive responses and potential value, we transform our relationship with these experiences. Many people report that difficulties faced with grateful acceptance ultimately led to growth, wisdom, or positive changes they wouldn't have chosen but now genuinely value. Pleasant surprises similarly benefit from this approach, though in different ways. When experiencing unexpected joys, opportunities, or successes, our habitual response often involves either clinging tightly to these experiences or diminishing them through worry about their temporary nature. Grateful acceptance allows fully enjoying positive surprises while neither desperately trying to prolong them beyond their natural duration nor diminishing their value through excessive concern about impermanence. This balanced appreciation often creates more genuine enjoyment than either grasping or dismissive responses. Body-based practices provide accessible entry points for developing grateful acceptance, especially during times of transition or unexpected change. Simply feeling the sensation of feet connecting with the ground while mentally noting "supported" can create a physical sense of acceptance. Deliberately relaxing areas of physical tension often held during stress, perhaps shoulders, jaw, or abdomen, while breathing fully creates physiological conditions more conducive to acceptance than resistance. These simple somatic practices help shift from mental resistance to embodied receptivity that supports grateful acceptance. The timing of grateful acceptance requires sensitivity and discernment. When first encountering significant difficulties or traumas, Immediate acceptance may not be possible or appropriate. The initial need might involve safety measures, emotional processing, or practical responses to urgent situations. Grateful acceptance becomes most relevant after these immediate needs are addressed. As we integrate experiences over time, recognizing this appropriate timing prevents using acceptance practices as premature spiritual bypass that avoids necessary emotional processing or practical action. Community support significantly enhances our capacity for grateful acceptance during challenging times. Sharing experiences with others who understand this approach creates validation and perspective that isolated practice often lacks. Hearing how others have found unexpected value in difficult circumstances provides inspiration and practical examples without minimizing genuine challenges. Many Buddhist practitioners join formal or informal groups specifically to support each other in maintaining grateful acceptance amid life's inevitable surprises and transitions. Research increasingly confirms the psychological benefits of practices resembling grateful acceptance. Studies show that people who maintain appreciative awareness, even during difficulties, demonstrate greater resilience and post-traumatic growth than those who respond with either complete resistance or passive resignation. The combination of realistic acknowledgement with active meaning-making represents a particularly effective approach for navigating challenging life events. These findings align with Buddhist insights about the transformative potential of maintaining grateful acceptance amid life's continuous changes. The practice develops gradually through consistent application to both minor and major surprises. Many people find it helpful to begin with small, daily, unexpected events, perhaps traffic delays, weather changes, or minor schedule disruptions. By practicing grateful acceptance with these smaller situations, this is happening. What value might I find here? We develop mental habits that become available during more significant life surprises. This gradual approach builds capacity through manageable challenges rather than expecting immediate mastery during major life difficulties. Daily reflection practices help integrate grateful acceptance into our ongoing experience. Taking a few minutes each evening to identify unexpected events from the day and explore how you responded to them develops greater awareness of habitual reactions. Noticing instances where you successfully practiced grateful acceptance builds positive reinforcement, while recognizing when resistance created additional suffering develops motivation for continued practice. This regular reflection gradually transforms how we relate to unexpectedness from automatic resistance to receptive engagement. This practice of grateful acceptance for life's surprises naturally prepares us for the final consideration in our exploration: how to integrate this Buddhist wisdom about expectations and unexpectedness into our complex modern lives. While these teachings emerged from traditional contexts very different from our contemporary reality, their psychological insights remain remarkably relevant to current challenges. Adapting these ancient practices to modern circumstances doesn't require adopting religious beliefs, but rather applying practical psychological principles in ways that address our specific contemporary conditions. Modern life presents unique challenges for working with expectations due to its unprecedented pace, complexity, and constant connectivity. We face information overload, continuous partial attention, and social comparison at scales unimaginable in traditional Buddhist contexts. Marketing and social media constantly create new expectations about how our lives, bodies, relationships, and experiences should be. Achievement culture often promotes unrealistic standards, while technology promises perfect control and predictability. These conditions make Buddhist insights about expectations and surprises particularly valuable, but require thoughtful adaptation to contemporary circumstances. Simple daily practices offer accessible starting points for integrating this wisdom. Brief mindfulness pauses, perhaps 30 seconds to feel your breathing before checking email, answering your phone, or entering meetings, create space to notice expectations forming before they solidify into demands. Setting intentional technology boundaries creates mental space necessary for present moment awareness. many people find that designating specific times to completely disconnect from devices allows the mind to settle into natural rhythms that support presence rather than continuous anticipation and reactivity. Work environments particularly benefit from applying these principles thoughtfully. Many workplace cultures inadvertently promote rigid expectations through detailed projections, aggressive targets, and inflexible planning that creates stress when reality inevitably diverges from predictions. Introducing practices that balance clear direction with adaptability, regular plan adjustments based on emerging realities, explicit recognition of uncertainty in projections, celebration of creative responses to unexpected challenges helps organizations maintain both purposefulness and flexibility. Many companies report improved innovation and employee well-being after incorporating these balanced approaches to planning and expectations. Relationships in modern contexts face unique expectation challenges worth addressing specifically. Social media often creates unrealistic relationship expectations through curated presentations of others' supposedly perfect partnerships, friendships, or family lives. Dating apps create unprecedented choice that sometimes diminishes appreciation for actual connections while amplifying expectations about perfect matches. Applying Buddhist wisdom in these contexts might involve conscious limitation of social comparison, explicit communication about expectations with important people in your life, and regular gratitude practices focused on appreciating actual relationships rather than measuring them against idealized versions. Time pressure represents one of modern life's most significant challenges for implementing these practices. With continuous demands for productivity and achievement, taking time for mindfulness or reflection can seem impossible. Integrating brief practices into existing routines offers practical solutions, perhaps bringing full attention to your morning shower, practicing mindful awareness during your commute, or taking 3 conscious breaths before beginning new tasks. These stealth practice approaches develop awareness without requiring additional time commitments that might feel unsustainable amid busy schedules. Physical environments significantly impact our capacity to implement these teachings. Creating small mindfulness anchors in your home or workspace, perhaps a plant, photograph, dot, or meaningful object that reminds you to pause and become present, helps interrupt autopilot functioning. Deliberately simplifying physical spaces reduces visual complexity that often triggers scattered attention. Many practitioners report that even modest environmental adjustments support their intention to remain present and notice expectations as they form rather than automatically believing them. Community support plays crucial roles in sustaining these practices amid contrary cultural messages. Finding others interested in similar approaches, whether through formal meditation groups, book clubs focused on mindfulness topics, or simply friendships with people who share these interests, provides validation and encouragement that isolated practice often lacks. Online communities can supplement in-person connections, offering support for those without local access to like-minded practitioners. These supportive connections help maintain commitment when dominant culture continuously pulls toward expectation-driven living. Modern psychological research offers valuable frameworks that complement Buddhist insights while using contemporary language. Concepts like cognitive flexibility, psychological resilience, and emotional regulation describe qualities that Buddhist practices develop, creating bridges between traditional teachings and current understanding. Many people find that learning about research supporting these approaches increases motivation and confidence in their value. This integration of traditional wisdom with contemporary science creates a particularly robust foundation for applying these principles in modern contexts. The incremental nature of this integration deserves emphasis. Small, consistent steps ultimately create more sustainable change than dramatic but temporary overhauls. Beginning with manageable practices like daily gratitude reflection, brief mindfulness pauses, or conscious technology builds capacity that gradually extends to more challenging applications. Patience with this process proves essential, as our minds have developed expectation habits over decades that naturally require time to transform. Many experienced practitioners report that modest but consistent practice ultimately created significant changes in their relationship with expectations and surprises. Perhaps most importantly, integrating these teachings requires self-compassion when we inevitably fall short of our aspirations. Our minds naturally form expectations despite our best intentions, and will certainly experience resistance to unwelcome surprises regardless of our practice. Buddhist psychology recognizes this natural human tendency and emphasizes gentle, persistent redirection rather than harsh self-judgment when we notice ourselves caught in old patterns. This compassionate approach creates sustainable practice much more effectively than perfectionism or self-criticism ever could. The wisdom of these Buddhist teachings ultimately offers a profound but practical shift in how we experience everyday life. By loosening our grip on rigid expectations while remaining engaged with meaningful intentions, we discover greater freedom to appreciate life as it actually unfolds rather than continuously measuring it against mental projections. This approach doesn't require dramatic life changes or spiritual beliefs, but rather represents a practical psychological shift available to anyone willing to experiment with different ways of relating to expectations and surprises. Through patient practice and gentle persistence, these ancient insights can transform our experience of modern life from continuous striving and disappointment to greater presence, appreciation, and resilience amid life's inevitable unexpectedness.